And there was one fella who was really aggressively clapping us on the back and shaking hands, and he was going, "That was great, that was really fabulous, that was fantastic." And it was Jimmy Page.
What?
On this week's episode of That Sound podcast, we have the multi-instrumentalist Evan Walsh. Evan is formerly the drummer in the Strypes.
He has now got his new project, The Savage Hearts, who has dropped a single this week, Gang War. Here is our conversation with Evan. We hope you enjoy it.
On this week's episode of That Sound podcast, we have the multi-instrumentalist Evan Walsh. Bass player, drummer, pianist, saxist. From David Letterman to Conan O'Brien to Glastonbury to touring all around the world. He's seen it, he's done it, he's wore the t-shirt, and now he's sitting here with us.
Yes.
Evan, a pleasure to have you on the podcast, man.
Cheers, lads. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on this wonderful evening.
Yeah, beautiful night, isn't it? Yeah,
good,
summer night.
Good calving weather.
Yeah.
So you've been busy.
Yeah, very busy at the minute. Savage Hearts, the new band project. Kind of, we got our first single out on the 26th of February, last Saturday, which would have been the 9th of March. We did our launch gig for it, launch party kind of gig at a secret undisclosed location, which is now fully disclosed to most people. And so it couldn't be happier, to be honest, with the buzz that of the track. You know, people sharing it and covering it.
It's a dingo, man. And
Thanks.
Speed Kills.
Yeah.
Myself and Gavin were talking about Speed Kills. Is definitely one of our favourites.
Oh, that's great. Going for a bit of it's a bit of a Ramones homage, like Ramones meets a bit of 50s with a bit of this.
Definitely.
Kind of like with B-sides. I'm very keen on singles having B-sides and stuff, even on Spotify and things like that. And you kind of want the B-side, you want to let loose a wee bit.
And you did let loose on that one. Yeah. It's just a party going on in your head, man.
It's a bit more of a laugh, you know, that kind of thing.
It's a brilliant tune, though.
Thanks very much.
It's absolutely class.
Thanks.
I was actually talking to Dave Moore the other day, who was listening to it from Today FM.
Oh, are you joking?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. It's finding out live on air. That's class.
That's
great.
Yeah, he was a fan.
All right, must get his email off you now.
Reach out to him on Instagram. He's a good man to get back to it.
Absolutely, no, absolutely, because we're on a wee label with this great little label, Blowtorch Records,
over in Galway. Right?
Yeah, over in Galway, and they're a great crowd. Richard is the main man. It's like fully independent operation and all that. So it's kind of like, it's nice. After in the Strypes days, you know, there was a lot of, you know, we were very happy initially, but then I think the more you kind of go through that side of the business, the more things get taken out of your hands, and then you have to try and claw them back.
You had more freedom now with Blowtorch.
Complete freedom. Yeah. So I always had a feeling I would, and I did in theory, but actually working with an indie label, I way prefer that freewheeling spirit. You know what I mean? You're kind of, you're doing your thing and you're presenting it to somebody who wants to, you know, help you get it out there, as opposed to when you're on the major label thing, they kind of want to, well, you know, you're an investment to them, so it's kind of like, or it's like a
you do what I say.
Well, it's kind of like
Trade ends of sanity. You can do it your own way if it's done just how I say.
Yeah. It's kind of like you can do it your way, but it'll be a little bit harder. Because you know, they won't maybe throw their weight behind it if they don't think it's what you should be doing, you know, that sort of thing. But more on that
as we go. So let's go back to the start then. You went to school in Cavan?
Oh, in Cavan, Cavan, just outside Cavan town, and I actually was with two of the lads out of the Strypes. Two of us were in the same, three of us were in the same primary school.
Okay.
So we were always in that kind of musical environment, you know, from a very early age, kind of crack.
And what kind of stuff were you listening to in the early days?
Oh, well, I'm from a family of absolutely hardcore, like devastating Beatle fanatics, as in like just major.
Right, okay.
On both sides of the family, you know, huge music fans, on like as in a lot of my uncles and even aunties and cousins and all that. We loads of musicians in the family, and there was a hardcore kind of Beatles thing, which kind of informed my whole view of bands, view of everything like that. You know, would have grown up like me and my sister. She's very musical as well, and when we were really small, like we'd be watching like Hard Day's Night, all the Beatle movies, and the Monkeys, Hey We're the Monkeys TV show, all that kind of thing. So it always had all them videos, all the VHSs were on repeat, like when we were kids. So that idea of a band is like a kind of a fun, wacky, cool thing to do was kind of like embedded in us from that age, from seeing the Beatles films and seeing all that stuff.
And was the boys similar? The boys in
the lads probably would have come from different backgrounds in the sense that they'd all had musicians in their families, probably just coming at it from different angles. And I think it was really when they started coming over, you know, my house was kind of the epicenter of it. I've noticed that
was the hub.
I'm kind of I'm a madman for reading into bands. I'm always reading biographies and, you know, researching. I love kind of music history is nearly a huge part of me interest in music. It's kind of like what fascinates me. So like there's always seems to be an epicenter for bands. They always seem to go to somebody's house or somebody's, you know, garage or whatever. There's a chosen location. And so our house was the place where the hub is right. And bit like this is the hub here.
This is the hub.
Maybe you being a drummer dictated that.
Would have had a lot to do with it as well. Yeah. There would have been a bit of rehearsing in one of the other boys' garage, but it was never as you know. There was always time wasted bringing gear and, you know, backing the car up with the drum kit in it and all that sort of stuff. So
the most tedious job known to man.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why I gave myself a break. Jumped on the bass for a minute, just to change it up for a minute. But yeah, and we both know that pain, you know.
Oh man. Well, unfortunately, I don't know it just yet, or the luxury of having a tech. But I'm sure.
Yeah.
That was fabulous.
When you can have one, it's great. Yeah. We had a great. I'll shout out actually. John Mack.
Brilliant.
was the guy who was with the Strypes for all them years, and he actually totally weird coincidence. Kind of like he came through another end of the industry, came to work with us, but turned out he played in the 80s with a band my dad's band had played with, so we felt like we known him our whole lives sort of thing. And so
that's incredible.
Shout out to John. He was an absolute legend. He was our sound man and my drum tech in one go for most of the Strypes time.
Brilliant.
Great lad.
Wow.
Shout out John.
Yeah.
Keep rocking.
And he is, I know for a fact he is. He's a drummer and you know, does his own thing, tours with loads of bands and all that. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
So after we say jamming in your house with the boys and
yeah.
Your first gig, where did you go? Did you play at school or
we did? Yeah. So I wouldn't have been. The funny thing is, it probably wasn't very publicly musical, if you know what I mean. At school age, it wasn't like, you know, there wasn't the outlet really. I don't think. At the time, just the way the thing fell. But the revelation for ourselves and for everybody else really was we had put, when we were kids, we played a school concert one year, and we actually were called the Strypes back then. We were like 12, and we just that's where we came up with the name. We had to do like 3 songs at the school concert, and that's where the name came out of around that time. So like the lads would have been going over to my house, and we would have been kind of getting immersed into things that, you know, me and my sister growing up immersed in. So we were kind of getting a wee act together of a few songs that we
just doing covers at that.
Just doing covers, yeah, and kind of, you know, random covers at that. You know what I mean? You haven't got the concept of direction in your head yet at that age. You know, like it's like, you know, 11, 12, 13, that kind of age. You know, so you're only really getting the idea in your head of, well, we'll do a Beatles song and we'll do Teenage Kicks and we'll do all the classics.
I think everybody does.
Everybody does Teenage Kicks and
everything's fresh and Twist and Shout is such a good go-to as well.
Yeah. All them songs that you start playing, you know, we would have done like that. Like I Feel Fine would have been the Beatle one we done. And
Hey Jude, would that have been another one?
No, actually, I didn't play Hey Jude. I think that would have been a bit too complicated at that age with the piano and all that. But I've played Hey Jude since then in other situations. But what was I going to say? Yeah, we would have done like kind of a bit of a shadow of what was going to come. We like did a few Chuck Berry rock and roll music with Chuck Berry, and
nice.
And that
Johnny
was,
be good.
Yeah, and that would have been, I would have been pushing that from an early age. I think, like, again, since I was about 9 or 10, I think I got mad into the Chuck Berry CD that we had in the house, and that kind of became very formative for what has come since, has all been kind of hovering
for
around
sure
that,
and
you know?
I think that's evident in your style from especially Snapchat on some of those not should I say heavier, fast or more driven songs.
Definitely
that the speed was incredible. I remember going to see you guys play as the Strypes in the Olympia
back
in the day, and you had opened with Rebel.
Oh yeah, David Bowie just died. Yeah.
And it was absolutely incredible. And
yeah.
for myself, it was such an inspiration actually
Right. Oh, geez, thanks.
to try and push the boat. And
yeah.
that's where I aspired to be, was to be up on that stage and
wow.
to see you play with some of that intensity and
thanks
just
very
the
much.
speed of the right hand. But even the shuffle at that speed was like, oh man.
Oh really?
Yeah, and like some
Thanks very
people
much. I
have
appreciate you
that
saying so.
experience, Evan, of, you know, they go to a gig and they see something, they're like, oh man, I want to stop playing, or throw this out the window. It's like, I just wanted to get home.
Oh, that's
I remember
great.
the boys in
I
the
want to
band.
get out of here.
Yeah, I was playing in Black Tie event at the time. And we all went as a band.
Yeah.
And we went for a couple of drinks after it, and then went home. And I remember just thinking in the pub, was like being so consumed by the gig. It's like, I just want to go home and practice.
Oh, well, geez, means a lot.
Where's my practice pad? I need to level up here.
Yeah, cheers.
So that was a fabulous gig experience.
Thanks very much. I like them Olympia gigs. Excuse me. We did, I think, the Olympia 3 times, I think, or something, over the course of a few years.
Nice.
And we played at other times, did like charity gigs, charity bills in there. I always thought it was great.
Yeah.
Playing the old theatre style.
Yeah,
thing.
there's a lot of character to that place.
Yeah. I love that kind of crack when you get
And
onto
there's
that.
so many big names have played that venue.
Absolutely.
Johnny
yeah.
Cash. And
Bruno Mars was another one who would
but
have
some of
played
the,
there.
like when you're walking out, you see the pictures on the wall.
On the wall.
You guys are probably there, I'm sure, too.
Oh, well, I don't know if we reached that stage yet.
You know,
maybe.
like, just it's definitely an iconic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a fabulous place to play.
One of the plenty that you did play in, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there as well. Yeah, but thanks very much for that. All those nice words about that.
No, that was a great memory, especially from early on.
Yeah.
I was only maybe 17 at the time, so
right. Yeah,
that's the direction I wanted to head. Very much so. I had my heart set on that, and I was like, this is incredible.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, when you say about the right hand was my own worst enemy, I think, for most of me drumming time, because I kind of aspired, like you're saying, like to get that really fast tempo. Like we can get on to influences and all that, but like a lot of drummers that I would have been listening to would have had that really fast right hand and shuffling and things like that, coming from the kind of blues place.
But like that shuffling Blue Collar Jane is just
cheers.
Man.
That's kind of a blues thing mixed with a kind of a 60s 70s that you would
feel. I think we'll get back to the tech stuff later, but if I can remember rightly, I think was it like a red Oyster Pearl Ludwig kit you would have played that time?
Yes, you're dead right.
Yeah,
you're dead right.
I remember being
Keystone
infatuated.
Series.
Man, it was class too. The finish on that was like,
cheers.
I was just blown away by the whole thing.
Yeah. I know. I like that now. I had a couple of kits. Still actually have them. A few kits in that finish. You know,
nice.
From back then.
The
early endorsement days. You know.
That's the good people over at Ludwig.
Yeah. All the lovely sound legends over in the Ludwig Corporation. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
So, you were 16 when you got signed, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I just turned 16. Ross the singer was 15. That was the big.
How did that happen?
At the time, in a kind of a funny series of events, because we put out our own EP. We did, and we were at this stage in the hardcore kind of rhythm and blues background. We wanted that kind of Dr. Feelgood was the band that really hit us like a ton of bricks, which is to say is kind of developing on from that Chuck Berry thing, listening to the old Chuck Berry compilation CDs and things like that. Then we came across bands like there's a kind of a whole late 70s sort of scene called pub rock, which would be like a lot of them real back to basics bands, kind of mostly in England, a lot of real English back to basics, like proto-punk bands really, that before the Sex Pistols and before the Clash, the kind of bands that those lads would have gone to see in those kind of small clubs in London and all that. So like Dr. Feelgood would have been a key. They were kind of like, they were like an English version of like those bands like the MC5 and all that kind of were punk before punk, but Dr. Feelgood were specifically coming from a kind of an R&B background, but doing it in this kind of proto-punk kind of way. And Eddie and the Hot Rods and Rockpile, another band, Dave Edmunds and Nick Lowe, and we kind of got into this little obscure little scene, and we were like, that's the thing we want to do. And the early Who as well, and the Animals and bands like that, would have been the kind of key references. So we had a kind of an EP that we put together of just 4 covers from the start, and we were going back and kind of getting a lot of old blues songs and giving them the treatment that we thought those bands.
Okay, you put a twist on it, yeah.
Yeah, the bands we were being influenced by,
Okay.
we were putting that spin on it. Yeah, the Yardbirds, like, you know, bands like that. We would have been kind of totally consumed by that kind of buzz, you know. And
What a great era of music.
Yeah. So it kind of like, and taking a bit from all them kind of 50s, kind of between the 50s and the 80s, a lot of different influences from around those different times we were kind of taken from. And YouTube was a big thing in that as well, because we were one of the first, people that said this about us at the time, we were one of the first generations, like as in of people in bands to grow up with YouTube as your source of inspiration, you know, because it kind of stops you from thinking, oh well, this is current and that's not, and that's this not. You don't know, you're not thinking about it, you're just thinking, well, I'm looking at you know, like, let's say modern band I really like, let's say the OCs, American kind of garage surf band. You'd be watching them 1 minute, then you're watching the Kinks the next minute, then you're watching something else, you know, so you're a bit like, well, it's all just there, it's just like a big library basically. It'd be like
encyclopedia.
Yeah, it'd be like going to the library and not reading a book from, you know, 100 years ago, you know, and only reading what came out this year, you know. It's kind of like, you know, so we had this EP, and through some kind of buzz really, our own kind of, you know, our own kind of persistence really, we were kind of sending it away to all sorts of people, and we made a video. It was directed by a friend of ours, Finn Keenan, who has gone on to do really great things in filmmaking, video making and all that. But like, it got played, I think, through that, I think it got played on RTE, a pre-scandal Tuberty. Pre-pay scandal Tuberty. Played it on his show, and then that led to us actually being asked on the Late Late. And
That's right, the Toy Show, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, we actually did the Toy Show before that, even when we were really young. Yeah, we actually got on the Toy Show.
Was that before? That was
before the EP. Even. So that's actually another little pocket of history as well, that we ended up, we got on the Toy Show around the time, only in the years following us doing the school concert kind of crack. We got onto that.
And you played a couple of times, was it? Was it the...
Yeah. Would have gone a couple of years, and it was just a thing that you do. You know the way, like, when you're that age, everybody wants to be on the Toy Show, and so
and get noticed and get yourself out there.
Yeah, and like I even know loads of people in Cavan who like had also applied to be on the Toy Show. You know, kind of in subsequent years met people that were like, oh, you applied to do that as well. So like, we got on. That was 2010, so we were still very young, and then. Only a couple of years later, we actually got on the proper Late Late, doing one of the tracks from the EP, and through that, record label people in Ireland saw us. Then, you know, the way in the music industry, so like the buzz, it's a very small place really. It's like a small little village where everybody knows each other. You know, the buzz was passed from the record labels in Dublin, you know, told the people in England about us. We were going over and we started playing in London, getting a few gigs and all that. So kind of just on our own kind of natural buzz really, that we just gigged, and it was only us and my dad really. Dad was a
big force.
Yeah, well, he was the big you know, like my parents were a big influence on me musically and all that, because they're such music heads, you know, sort of thing. So we kind of grew up with a kind of a mutual respect of our tastes, me and my sister and my parents and all that. So my dad had been in bands. He was the only one really of all our parents who'd actually been in a proper band and done, you know, like, you know, gigged around the place, and he'd been to gigs in England and been on telly, you know, and stuff like that, and done a few bits, like put out a few singles and things like that. So we were rehearsing up in the bedroom, and then when we wanted to get gigging, it was him that we asked to, can you bring us here, can you bring us there? And so he would be totally reluctant nearly to take any credit, wrongly in my view, but anyway.
It was him that opened some doors though.
Yeah.
Dad became the driving force and the roadie.
Exactly, he became
manager,
he became the literal driving force, because he was bringing us around the place because we were so young, and we got, like, you know, offered, like, we were just putting up YouTube videos and things like that, and somebody who ran a club night in Dublin offered us a thing, and it was, I think we kind of had this thing that we looked very different and we sounded very different.
Yes.
And we had a bit of this prodigious vibe about us. So
definitely.
So people were drawn to that and saying, oh, will you come and play this here? And so that's kind of where it kind of just, we never, like, I think some people thought that when we kind of got up to a higher level with the band, people thought it was because of our age and all that. People thought it was kind of a careerist thing, and it couldn't have been less of that. Like, none of us had had designs in a career, as in we all thought, wouldn't it be great if in years and years time that happened. We weren't thinking it was going to happen tomorrow, you know. It was kind of like other people came to us and projected their image of ourselves onto us. You know what I mean? As in people thought we were what they wanted us to be, in the sense that people thought, oh well, it makes sense, it's this story where, you know, it was all kind of supposed to happen, and it really wasn't. It was
a
really,
unique selling point, whereas you guys were just being yourselves and
we
playing
were
the
literally
music
just
you
being
loved to
ourselves,
play.
and we were just being little nerdy lads as well, as in we were totally obsessive over the bands we were into. There was no kind of like it wasn't like we weren't very hip, like, you know what I mean? We were just off in our own little corner, obsessing over these obscure bands. You know, trying to, you know, dig deeper and deeper into these kind of, and the attraction, definitely for me, the attraction was like, you know, the finding the slightly off the beaten track music, and you know, I mean, like Chuck Berry's hardly off the beaten track, but you know, like,
I know what you mean, though,
in a relative context,
you
know, like we kind of, that led us into more kind of blues based, Bo Diddley, John D. Hooker, all that stuff, which still really resonates with me today. You know what I mean? My taste hasn't changed that much really in all that time. You know, it's just kind of maybe got a bit more diverse or something. But so it kind of just happened without us wanting it or intending it to.
Doors just kept opening.
You know what I mean? And I think maybe people might have perceived it as, well, this was obviously a concerted effort to create this buzz, create this thing with this kind of weird novelty angle to it.
Yeah.
And that never, we were as clueless as the next fella, you know, when it came to that kind of thing. So people just, as I say, projected onto us of, you will be this band that's going to do well at this young age, and we're going to bring you here and bring you there and all that. And we were going, I mean, why not? You know, if it's going to happen now, then it might as well, you know, sort of thing.
You rode the wave, you just went with it.
Well, exactly, yeah. And I mean, it was that kind of thing of, if you don't do it now, maybe it's not going to happen ever. And then if you do it at the time that you're kind of aligned with what's going on for whatever reason, it's like, you know, this kind of, you know, this we're being brought in this direction organically by life. So if we kind of took the risk and we rolled with it, in the sense that we all quit school, and my dad had to leave his job because they wouldn't let him keep his job and be working with us. So there was a lot of sacrifices like that you're kind of thinking, well, but what if this doesn't pan out? Do you know what I mean? We're all kind of slightly fucked. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So there was a lot on the line, which is why we kind of went for the major label thing, because we were kind of being headhunted by. There was a period, people told us since then, that there was a period where we were the most sought after, talked about band in London on the music scene, as in the record label scene in London, which didn't feel like that at the time. But like Universal, Sony, RCA, Rough Trade, everybody was having meetings with us. We were kind of we were in talks with, you know. And I think we were, even back then, and this is where it's kind of like, I suppose is it sliding doors moments or something like that, that like we were drawn to the indie thing back then. We were thinking, oh, Rough Trade, oh, whatever. But being really just coldly practical about things, we'd made such a sacrifice with our lives, basically, and people's families had made a lot of sacrifices to let us do this, to make this thing happen, and there was a lot riding on it. So it was kind of like, at that time, there was an element of, well, something that's going to be stable, that's going to, and the major label at that time offered us a more stable income, more stable things, contract, longer terms, longer, more money into recording and into touring and things like that, which, you know, it's not very cool, but you have to kind of take that into consideration. And there's all that stuff.
When you get that back, and you got to take it with both hands and just sort of run with it. Kind of,
because you could have, you could have the rock and roll cred and say, nah, we kind of, we went the hardcore way. But we would have liked to have done that at that time, but it just, you think about it, if you said to most 16-year-olds, you know, to be making these decisions and
that's what I mean. Like, did you feel a lot of pressure, like, because of the sacrifices that people made, or were you still riding that wave?
Well, a little bit. Yeah, I think as it went on, there's an element of sacrifice to it, because we were sacrificing,
like you say, about your dad and all that. When that decision was coming, were you still just going, or was the pressure there to make the right decision for everybody?
Well, there was always, in those early years, there was a little undercurrent of, oh God, are we really actually making this decision? You know, that kind of thing. Where
Are
you're
we
a bit
doing
like
this?
Yeah.
Is
And
this
it's-
happening?
Yeah, and it's like, exactly, and it's like, even if you're, I don't know if you know that, maybe you find that yourself in a situation where you're making something happen, or something's happening that you wanted to happen, but you've nearly thought about it so much, you've overthought it, and you don't know whether you really want it to happen when it comes to it. You know, that kind of feeling. There's a bit kind of a
Yeah, it's just right before you jump in.
yeah. You're a bit like, oh God, am I really?
Am I doing
Yeah,
this?
yeah. Like,
Or maybe this isn't everything I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
But then it's
yeah.
back to that saying of you got to jump in to swim.
Yeah, totally. Because I remember even when we were doing the signing of the record deal and all that sort of stuff, and it was kind of like, you nearly, as you're moving in slow motion. So,
Shaky
yeah.
hand.
You're literally, in a way, you're like signing the deal, and as you're doing it, you're like, what if this goes tits up? And then you're signing like that. And I don't know, maybe we were particularly cynical 16-year-olds, maybe because
Well, you were so young, like.
yeah. Well, we spent so much of our time, we spent all our time really watching music documentaries and reading books and all that about people getting fucked over by
Yeah, which is a big
So we
thing.
were actually
Managers and record
kind of,
labels and
and unusually
so the story goes.
yeah. And unusually enough for young lads, we were hyper aware of that because it was like we knew all the cliches.
From your dad, I suppose.
Yeah,
and all that,
and
Which is fabulous that you had that influence.
yeah,
You
yeah,
had someone with a head of sense, because maybe not to put words in your mouth or say how you were feeling, or all of you were. It was probably a benefit at 16 that you loved what you done. You were like,
Oh,
man,
yeah.
this is the coolest thing ever. Like, why wouldn't we do this?
Yeah.
And maybe didn't overthink it to an extent.
Yeah.
On the same
Totally.
wavelength.
We definitely had, like, we had enough awareness to think, to have a slight kind of, we want to do this, but in the back of your mind you're going, God, imagine if this all went totally tits up and it was really, you know, or
Back to school.
Yeah, or if exactly, or if
Billy
it all,
Madison. Back to school.
Yeah.
Back to school.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you could do that, or you could end up thinking, oh, you know, even back then there was some sort of vague notion of like, what if you get compromised from what you really want to be doing, or all that sort of stuff. But you know,
Did you feel that from the very start?
well, we always worried about it. We
Okay.
always really worried about it because from day one, because what we were doing was a really, at that time, very unusual thing. Where I even think now, like, let's say, with the Savage Hearts, like the current band and all that, there's like you know, we're coming from like a garage rock, bit of psych in there,
Yeah,
kind
definitely.
of influence, all that kind of thing. You know, it's kind of coming from that more fuzzy, heavier garage rock place, which we were kind of unconsciously driving towards even back in the early Strypes days, which we didn't maybe have the terminology for it. But I even think nowadays that sort of stuff is a little bit more in vogue with certain bands and with certain scenes.
Yeah.
Certain scenes are healthier now than even in 2012 when we signed the deal.
Yeah.
We didn't have many reference points because we were 16. We weren't like, they're totally familiar with, like, you know, West Coast underground garage rock labels. So we weren't going to be like, oh yeah, well that's where
That's
you
the
know,
way to go.
that's where it belongs. We're
Let's
like,
fly to California and let's seek out this producer or this manager
We
or
were kind of going, well, where
record
do we
exec.
belong?
And
Yeah. We kind of like, we knew what we wanted to do, but then when you kind of end up meeting with labels, even from day one, there's talk of, oh well, we could get so and so to write the songs, and we get so and so to do this, and we get so and so to do that, and it was kind of like the line that we always said. It's like, we love everything about you. How can we change it? You know, it's like, we love everything about you is the line, because obviously, particularly when we got to London and we were like the so-called hip, sought-after buzz band, you know, we were actually totally cynical even back then in that regard, that people were like, you know, I remember people, you know, because we were 16 and all that, people thought they could impress us by kind of whipping out. It was like a lot of
smoke and mirrors.
Well, a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of name dropping, a lot of kind of PowerPoint presentations of music needs new legends and heroes and all that. And we were a bit like, yeah, right, okay.
Yeah,
Well, at least, you know, you obviously had a good team around you. It sounds like your dad really was.
Yeah.
You know, he was over the shoulder going, no lads.
Yeah, and I think just we have that. We had maybe just a no bullshit, and I think part of the thing as well was that we were already being influenced by bands, maybe like, you know, to say Dr. Feelgood and all those bands. Their whole ethos was kind of no bullshit. It was very much an it was like an anti-bullshit, anti-trendy thing. So we were really like in that kind
It was the punk thing.
Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah. And so we were kind of in that anti-trendy, anti-whatever headspace. So like, you know, I remember we went to like a label meeting, and you know, people were saying, you know, it's nearly like that. You know, they're talking about how everybody's having a great laugh. And it's like, tell you what, it's always like this, isn't it? It's always like this in here. And so came in, and you know, one of the bands, whoever they had signed at that time, you know, he just came in and he just like stood on the table and started jamming with his guitar, and it was like awesome. And we were like, that's so lame. That sounds so naff, and it's also totally a lie. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, how is that, you know?
But I'm sure there's plenty of guys 16, 17 that would have swallowed that all up.
Yeah, I think so. And probably because I think we just had that grounding in the whole world of bands. It was like, that was the world that we came
You were
from.
learning from 12, 13.
Yeah. And even before that, like, I mean, even like, when I was a kid, I remember like it's like the Beatles thing, growing up with the massive Beatles influence, the Beatles anthology documentaries, you know, the 8-part. We would have them on video, and sure, when I was like 6 and 7, I was just wandering over and putting the anthology in, and George Harrison talking about his first acid experience and all that sort of stuff, and it was just obviously unconsciously.
Daddy, what's acid?
Yeah. You bring it
just a wee bit closer.
Yeah, totally. And you know, that was just kind of all that stuff was thinking in about, and all the, you know, like how these band stories go. You know what I mean, about, you know, different labels. You know, people getting rejected by labels, and management coming in and messing things up, and people getting swindled out of money, and all that was all kind of just part of it. And then by the time, as I say, we got to that sort of signing age, like we were very, very anti, like at that time we were, because I suppose because we were young and all that, everybody was throwing around words like X Factor and throwing all that, you know, which it's like, you know, that was very much of that era, and we were totally...
That like, wasn't you.
That wasn't never us, never ever us. But when we started getting into that area of labels and things like that, so I think that's why we never swallowed it, that we were always like, you know, we knew what we liked, we knew where we were coming from. We were very anti showbiz, very anti.
You were punk.
More in our attitude. We were much more like, you know, we
didn't want to be commercial. You wanted to be yourselves.
Not at all. And I mean, there was later some kind of very, I think, wrong-footed attempts to get the Strypes to be commercial, which I think the band suffered, to be honest. The more of a pressure there was on us to do something that might have been a little bit more commercial or less, you know, what we were really about. I just think the band suffered really, and it never suited us, you know what I mean?
Okay. So then in 2012? No, what year was Snapshot?
2013.
2013, yeah, September 2013 actually. Yeah,
and it reached number 2 in the Irish charts.
It did. We were
number 5 in England?
Yeah, number 5 in England. We were pipped to the post in Ireland by Arctic Monkeys. They wanted us to be out at the same time as Arctic Monkeys, because, you know, we were going on tour with them.
Was that the era of AM?
It was AM was number one. When we were number 2 in Ireland. So that was not a bad
start.
Yeah, because it was AM fairly dominated that whole era. You know,
that was a great album too.
Yeah.
And that was produced by Chris Thomas. Is that right? Yeah. He worked with Elton John, Pink Floyd, Beatles.
Yeah, Sex Pistols, Roxy Music. Chris Thomas. Funny enough, I don't know. Again, I'm going back to the Beatle obsessive thing. The Disney Plus Get Back Beatles thing.
Oh yeah.
Chris Thomas is in that.
Oh,
which is really weird. He's one of the young engineers in that. So if he's ever sticking that on Disney Plus, I probably watched it about 37 times now, all 9 hours of it. But there's a bit, I think in the 3rd episode, the engineers in the Apple studio are kind of doing their bits and pieces, and their names come up beside them all, and we were like going, I'm pretty sure that's fucking Chris Thomas. And thinking, geez, it really looks like a young Chris Thomas. And then about 10 minutes later, the credit comes up in the corner of the screen, Chris Thomas, assistant engineer. So he would have worked on the White Album and those Get Back sessions as well. So that was mental. And then he produced Nevermind the Bollocks, Sex Pistols album.
Oh,
he fully produced that one.
Wow.
Yeah. And produced Ian Jury. I'd be a big fan of Ian Jury. He would have produced his first band, and I engineered Dark Side of the Moon and things like that. Yeah.
And so that was just a wealth of knowledge to have.
Crazy,
at
absolutely
your
crazy.
fingertips.
Yeah. And he kind of came out of retirement, really, to produce us. He hadn't produced anybody in ages.
Wow.
And swiftly went back into retirement when he had to deal with major record labels again. I think he
sure.
remembered why he retired, that kind of thing.
I'm sure that was tough. Whereabouts did you record that album?
So
Evan?
we recorded that album. We were in a funny situation with that because we had found this studio down in Sussex, so just kind of near Brighton, but out in the countryside. And we were staying in this house that was near there. We were put there to make some demos in the first stages of signing and things like that. And we really liked the studio. We were really comfortable in it. It was weird. We'd never recorded in England before. I don't think we'd ever recorded professionally before. It had always been like our friends, a friend of my dad's or so-and-so relation knew somebody who had a home studio. I was always just done in somebody's house, doing the first EPs and that. And so, we were in a professional studio for the first time, and it was quite a small scale studio, really, as in it wouldn't have been up to the standard of like a Chris Thomas. He'd be used to being in all the, the most high powered,
The top end
studios.
Roads.
Yeah, he's kind of, Chris Thomas is like Bucking Abbey Road day one. It'd be the level he'd normally operate at. But we liked this studio, and maybe, I don't know whether it was just the familiarity on our part, or well, the label are always happy to save money. That never any time it's like, oh, you want to use that really cheap as fuck studio, you can surely.
Oh, let's do that.
Yeah. That sounds like a plan to me.
Well, it worked.
Cheers.
And is that where you recorded Snapchat then?
Yeah. So we did it there, and
Snapchat.
so it was. It was. I suppose for Chris Thomas, it was several steps down. Like down the ladder, but. We had a great time with him, though. We had a really good time working with him, and
it's a great album.
Oh man!
Thanks very much.
What an album!
Thanks very much. I think I'm pretty happy with it overall. That it's like, I think it kind of captured exactly what we were like at that time.
Is that your favourite album?
It probably is. Yeah. Of the three we did, it probably is, because I suppose enough time has passed now. I really don't like the second one.
Okay, yeah,
and
that's interesting.
Yeah. I really don't like the second one, and I quite like the third one. I think the third one was closer to where we were going, but it was probably fell between two stools a wee bit.
That was in Dean Street Studios, wasn't it?
The second album was done in Dean Street. Yeah. That was the label.
It topped the
label
charts
pressure
in
album.
Ireland.
It did actually. Yeah. So it was. I think on the back of, we'd done lots of things like the Arctic Monkeys tour was a big one for us.
Yeah.
So like around.
What was that like?
So that was fantastic. That was really brilliant. So like, I mean, the kind of the release of our first album it wasn't really a coincidence that you go into a record shop and there's AM. Oh, and on the other rack beside it is the band that's supporting them on the upcoming tour.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how we were asked to do that, but we were offered. We were just asked to do it. Our agent just told us the offer had come through. I think because the buzz was just kind of gradually, as I say, even though, let's say, the label might contrive to put the album out, say, oh, we'll put it out the same way as Arctic Monkeys, and that's their job to be doing marketing and all that. Yeah. But I mean, the actual following, because we were kind of at loggerheads with the label, even from the early days, we were always not doing what we were told and not doing what they ideally wanted us to do, meant that the success that we had and the buzz that was happening was much more just down to us touring and gigging, and we got the odd telly slot and things like that in England, but we did, like, Jules Holland was a big one. But we weren't on telly in England really that much, maybe I think just that one time. But we never really kind of saw eye to eye with them, the UK label in particular, so it was like, much less contrived than it would have been if we had have even gone along with them. We probably could have had a bigger buzz, but the way things were, we were always pushing against, it was like a kind of a tug of war situation most of the time. So that kind of buzz, it was all kind of snowballing, and probably like a high point definitely being the Arctic Monkeys tour.
Was that a European tour? Was that
UK and Europe? Yeah. So we were probably about 2 months with them, I'd say.
That was big arenas, like.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Like Earl's Court, played Earl's Court, which you don't have anymore, and actually a brilliant moment from the Earl's Court gig was we came off and we were finished the gig, and it was like we were really building things up to a climax. We used to kind of finish the gigs with this really kind of freak out jam thing, and loads of feedback, and go mental on the drums, and kind of the Who influenced finish,
minus the dyno, minus blowing up the bass players,
no smoke bombs or anything like that in the bass drum, but we used to try and finish in this big explosive kind of way, and we were coming off stage, we were just wringing wet, just soaked with sweat and all that, and people were like patting us on the back, coming off stage, whoever's like the road crew and all that sort of stuff, and we were getting these towels and just putting our faces in the towels like that, and there was one fella who was really aggressively clapping us on the back and shaking hands, and he was going, "That was great, that was really fabulous, that was fantastic," and it was Jimmy Page.
What?
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Wow.
Had come to see us. Well, not come to see us, but he'd come to see the whole gig. But his daughter had taken some pictures of us. She's a really great photographer, Scarlett Page, and she had photographed us at a gig. And she was like, "I keep going on to me dad about these lads. I keep going on about wanting to get him to."
Jimmy fucking Page.
Yeah,
and you think of the history. What Jimmy Page has done for music. One of those, when you think of a Gibson Les Paul.
One of the main men.
Jimmy Page.
Jesus, man, that must have been some moment.
So he was an absolute gent, and I think he'd seen us. We'd done Glastonbury that summer.
Yeah, what was that like?
That was good. I don't really remember much about it, in the sense that I'm not really a festival fan.
Okay.
I'm not into the festival experience.
The dirt, the grind, the grit.
I kind of feel like it's like whenever you're in that cycle of touring and all that, festivals, they're good exposure for you, and you play to people who you're not necessarily going to reach otherwise.
Okay.
Which is kind of the main advantage I see to them. But if we could, I'm kind of just, if I could play in like a kind of a nice old, like student union hall or something like that most of the time. That's where I like playing the most, or like a club or something like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of the level I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
And then when you get into the festival thing, I don't know, just the buzz of it never really hits me.
It wasn't the same, okay.
It wasn't the same. But having said that, you want to be on the bill, because it means that you're getting out there to different audiences and all that. But I kind of had more of a professional attitude to the festivals, where like Glastonbury was actually fantastic the first year, because we were on the John Peel stage, which kind of is a nice bit of cred to it, and all that sort of stuff. So I would have spent a lot of time listening to old John Peel sessions on YouTube. When I was in my early to mid teens, like you're listening to,
and then you're playing on the stage.
Would have listened to like the Damned or the Buzzcocks and all them bands, John Peel sessions on YouTube. You would have been, I would have been surfing through all them. And it was fantastic. Jesus, it was amazing. And I think Jimmy Page had seen us. I actually know he had seen us on the Red Button. He was watching Glastonbury on BBC.
Oh yeah, and he went for the other stage.
And he went for the Red Button, looking through, because just seeing what the bands were like, and him just sitting at home. And he got into us because, you see, we were so influenced by the Yardbirds, and he was in the Yardbirds for the last 2 years of their career.
Yeah, he had played, and Eric Clapton.
And
the wonderful Jim Gordon on drums had played.
Yeah. And the period with there was a period in the Yardbirds where Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page were in the band. So that's, when you talk about wanting to be transported to gigs, I think I'd be happy out of the Yardbirds gigs where Jeff Beck was stage left, Jimmy Page was stage right.
Right, can you imagine? And like those people
in one
hadn't
band,
a clue what they were seeing at the time.
Yeah. Because supposedly they supported the Stones on the tour around that time. This is my obsessive knowledge coming in here. The Stones, Ike and Tina Turner, and the Yardbirds with Beck and Page in the lineup.
Man,
and
imagine that for a gig. If you could go back to see that gig.
Yeah. And supposedly the Yardbirds were the unfollowable act that night. Apparently.
Who was that?
The Yardbirds. They were the act that blew everybody off. That kind of thing, because you had Beck and Page dueling on either side of the stage. So we were Yardbirds crazy, and so the fact that Jimmy was there, that was mental. Wow. And so we got to have a wee chat with him and all that sort of stuff. It was great, and he really is a gentleman. Like, he's a really lovely fella. And his daughter then, she was kind of an advocate of ours, I'd say, in the early days, because she was, and I think in that kind of classic way, everybody's the same. She'd been trying to get her dad to listen to us, and he's kind of going, yeah, whatever. And then he sees us on the telly, and then he goes to her, I was just watching this band, and it was the band that she'd been talking about the whole time.
Like, I've been telling you about this for so long.
Yeah. So there was a bit of that I understand going on. So
That's amazing.
that was a highlight, big style, big highlight. And actually, we did spend time with Jeff Beck as well. He did come to see us.
No way.
Yeah, which was a massive.
That's incredible.
Because I was incredibly
God rest
choked.
Jeff Beck.
Yeah, I was seriously choked up about him dying because the Yardbirds, his era, the Yardbirds in particular, was a big foundational influence on my musical thing, but also because we did get to spend a bit of time with him and all that sort of stuff. Like he came to see us in
the
London.
recording studio, isn't it?
Yeah, he turned up when we were making the first album,
Yeah.
and we jammed him for a little bit, which was mad. We did a Yardbirds rave up with him,
That's
because
cool.
we did a couple of them tunes in the set. We covered a few of them,
Those
so.
experiences.
Yeah. So it was wild.
Priceless.
Yes, that was wild, and so that was that kind of brought me back when he died. So suddenly, that brought me back to that time, and I was really emotional about it. I was like, "Fuck, that's really shit that he's not around now."
Yeah, just one of those immeasurable forces.
Oh, absolutely.
Of a guitar player.
And the Jeff Beck group, the early albums he did with the Jeff Beck group, he had Ronnie Wood on bass, a young Rod on vocals, pre Die I Think I'm Sexy Rod, and when Rod was kind of had a bit more cred going on, and those early Jeff Beck group albums are just
he's
insane.
a genius. He was a genius.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely insane. Yeah.
And then the third album, what you said, Spitting Image.
Yeah.
Ethan Jones.
Yeah, so that's another Beatles Get Back connection because
Yeah.
Glyn Johns, who's producing the sessions, that's his dad.
No way.
So Ethan Johns is Glyn Johns' son. So Glyn Johns he did them Beatles Get Back sessions, and he's
famous for one of the best drum miking techniques.
of all time.
Just
When the levy breaks and all that stuff.
His setup for that Glenn Johns method.
The miking
technique. 2 overheads and a kick and a snare. And absolutely incredible. Bonham sound, man.
Real minimalist. And it wasn't recording didn't they record that in a big old house? They were in like a kind of
I think it was something to do with a corridor. They had been out of the control room or out of the recording room, and there was a conversation, or either a drum was being tuned. I don't think I'm 100% accurate on this, but
something was going on. I remember that they took the drums out of the studio setup, and
someone had said like, "Wow, this would feel incredible."
The resonance,
the real drummer talk, where everyone thinks it's that. 1E. It's like it's just a single kick, and the resonance carries on to the next note. Just that huge sound.
Absolutely.
It's definitely one of my favourite Bonham tracks among others.
Oh, it's incredible.
We could probably sit here and talk about John Bonham all day.
Oh, we could surely. Like, I mean, he might. So Glyn Johns, he would have mic'd the drums for Ringo, Keith Moon, John Bonham. He would have recorded all them lads. Like he produced them. Who's Next?
Yeah.
He produced even the early Who stuff, My Generation and all that. He would have been the engineer on all that. And some of the early Stones stuff he would have done.
No way.
He was big in that early kind of British blues boom era, or British R&B thing, that it was like, early Stones, early Who. I'm trying to think. Like, it's a fairly inexhaustible list of incredible stuff that he was involved in.
It's funny how one man has brought out the best drum sounds, or some of my favourite drum sounds.
Of some of the best drummers.
Like any of Bonham's stuff is just untouchable.
Just
Charlie Watts from the Stones.
The rock solid player.
God rest Charlie.
Yeah, another one that
Honky Tonk
choked
Woman.
us all up
just
to bits.
One of my favourite drum tracks. Just the sound.
And Charlie's kind of weird, wonky way of doing things. He just had his own kind of little feel, and that's the thing and it's like with Charlie Watts and Ringo and all that, I absolutely love those kind of players, because it's like you mightn't be thinking, oh well, it's a million fills a second and it's crazy. It's not like it's not what you call it,
flash,
or it's not like drum acrobatics. It's not like, but try and play it like they can play it, and you can't do it.
It's feel. It's pocket.
Yeah.
And I would have explained this to Gavin before with feel and bits and pieces, and you would be very much aware of it. At the same time, that you could get 100 drummers in a room to play Ringo's parts, to play Charlie's parts, to play Bonzo's parts.
Yeah.
None of them will sound the same.
It won't happen, and you can't get you can try, like I used to try and get the Ringo feel, the windshield wiper on the hi-hat, try and play like that. I've tried to do that loads of times, and all those little stop-starty fills, and the bass drum, he had a really powerful bass drum, like he's a really loud drummer, Ringo, which nobody really outside of real drum nerds wouldn't be aware of. He's really beating the shit out of it, like especially on the early live Beatles stuff. He's absolutely kicking the shit out of the kit and crashing on the ride, and he's really got this amazing
enthusiastic when he's
a great style.
And he has that shuffle as well, like when he does this, like a more country and western shuffle that he brings into some
Steve Jordan, if you're familiar with Steve, I'm sure you are, of course. One of my favourite drummers has a great clip on YouTube where he talks about that Liverpool shuffle, sort of feeling, swing,
the kind of the cavern, the cavern stomp,
like the hi-hats being on the money, and like the snare being sort of a little lazy, and you know, the bass drum just being that little bit forward, and he's like trying to get everything all in the one. Is just like
all at the same time, and you just have that, as you say, same as Charlie Watts doing a kind of a blues shuffle or something like that. He just has his own kind of thing going on, you know, and like, I mean, I was a Keith Moon fanatic from day one as well, you know, trying to get some of that weird kind of like, with Keith Moon, it's like it's this constantly rolling. There's no kind of, there's no, it's kind of like it's in its own time signature, even though what he's playing doesn't necessarily fit. You don't think, you're kind of going, where's the 1, 2, 3, 4 sometimes. It's kind of, you think he's lost, but he's not, because he has his own internal.
It's his own thing. Yeah,
he has his own internal time signature that he's always sticking to, even if what he's playing is just like, you know, like, actually, I saw a thing the other day that was so spot on, that it's like, you know, a Keith Moon groove, like what most people would, like a Keith Moon 4/4 beat is what most other drummers would consider the most outlandish fill in the song.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He'd do the most outlandish fill on a constant rolling thing, you know, like, and it's
right in the moment, like, isn't
it?
Just that was his own unique twist on it.
Totally, yeah.
Can we go back then to, when you were touring America?
Yes, yeah. That's kind of back to
the first
album period. Yeah.
You had fun in a Toronto show.
Oh yeah. So I was telling this story recently as well, that this was only the week before, or within like a week or whatever, 8-9 days before we did the David Letterman show, which is kind of the apex of our American.
I actually watched that the other day.
Oh really? Yeah. The American jaunt was.
That must have been amazing, though. In fairness.
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, it was fantastic, and we were kind of riding a bit of a crest of it had all gone on, and it had all kind of snowballed to this ridiculous kind of extent that we were getting. You know, the producers, David Letterman, wanted us on the show, so it was like. That came about because we played Side by Side West in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
So
I'm sure that was incredible in itself at the time.
Oh, absolutely,
Some huge names on that.
And I think a lot of bands kind of, it's like our tour that we did around that time was like, so we played in like Nashville and Memphis, and it was fairly empty. The gigs were pretty empty.
Okay.
And you know, because we were first time in America, all that sort of stuff, and you know,
Nashville's a fun city.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like we went to all the main drag, like all the country bars, and seeing all the real country players and all that. We did do a bit of that, and what you call it? Yeah, so Nashville and Memphis, they're fairly empty. A couple of people turned up, as in like maybe like 20 or 30 people turned up in a room that could have held a couple of hundred.
Okay.
So like that was grand. You're thinking, well, this is the American thing. You just have to slog it out. And so we played. It played in Side by Side West in Austin, Texas. Excuse me. Played in Austin, Texas for Side by Side West, and it was like what you call it? Like you have to like be racing around the city playing as whatever gigs you get booked to play. It's all happening in those 3 days.
Okay.
And every gig you play there is like a showcase for TV producers, label heads.
Oh, yeah. So you gotta be on your game.
So it's kind of like the ultimate industry. Summit, basically. They all go down to Austin, Texas. All the people, the pluggers, the radio people, the label people, the TV people, they all kind of check out. It's all these kind of, you know, showcase sort of things. And so we would have played, I think we did something like 9 gigs in 3 days.
Whoa.
Like, as in you have to like race around playing all these spots. So like whatever, we had really good agents actually in America, and they were like, they got us all these little slots, and you have to. It's all like 45-minute sets.
Wow.
So you're like in, out, like horsing the gear up and down the street, running all over the city, into the back of the van you've hired, going all over the place. So it was mental.
Go, people, and then you're trying to
and
juggle
navigating the
everything
city, and like the
being
big American
personable
cities. Yeah, and you have to.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Sorry. Everything's bigger in Texas. Yeah. And you have to be on the they've got their southern hospitality. You have to be in good form for that, and all that sort of stuff. So you have to be giving your best sort of thing, like everywhere you go. And obviously we were really at that stage thinking, well, this is it, we're in America, you have to give it,
everything.
Yeah. And it's like, who the fuck would have thought we'd have been doing this? So that was then, like, once you got to the stage of, because like I say about the buzz would have got to a certain extent naturally, and then it becomes a career. Once you sign and once you're putting out albums and once you're doing this and that, that's when the kind of thing of, okay, well, you have to kind of pull your socks up here and actually get some kind of a result, that as long as it's like, if you think you've got it in you and you think it's what you want to do and put yourself beside, put 100% behind it, which at that stage we were really thinking, we're in America now, we have to go for this, and we did all them like 9 gigs in 3 days, whatever it was. We were dead in our feet. Like, you'd have no time you wouldn't really even be conscious of where you were and what you were doing, because as soon as you were done the 4th set of the day, so you just were gone.
You don't even know where you're coming or going.
Yeah. And you're running all over the city at the same time, and people, there's like, you're meeting 100 people, and it's all this kind of craziness. And like the first gig is like at 10 o'clock in the morning. Like the first set.
Wow.
It was at 10 in the morning, and it's like, the rest, we were all really like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And at that age as well, we were all peak teenage lie-in kind of era as well when we were on tour. So like, you're playing a full pelt set, loud. I think it was, but I remember I think it was like an outdoor gig somewhere in the city, in a kind of a garden type, like a public park.
Okay.
They turned into like an outdoor stage, and we played really early doors. Did a set there, and I think that's what the Letterman people saw.
Okay.
I think they were at that, and through our American label and agents and all of that that had come on board. That's how Letterman came about.
Wow.
And so
from Austin, like.
Yeah. So that was the kind of genesis of that. But so then Toronto, so that happened.
Yeah.
And then so that was at the start of the tour. So we did those 2 gigs.
You ruptured your.
Yeah, I don't even still know what happened exactly, but we done those 2 gigs, then South by Southwest, and from South by Southwest we won the best new band prize at South by Southwest. We were the band of the festival.
Daily.
So we were the Grulk prize, they called it, I think.
Okay.
So
that was a huge honour, Evan.
Yeah, massive. Yeah, so we won the best new band prize, and that just spread the buzz in the sense that by the time we worked our way along the tour, the gigs were getting fuller and fuller.
Yeah.
And then New York ended up being sold out, and the LA gig at the end was sold out.
Wow.
And so we were playing in clubs, but like, you're getting a couple of 100 people like coming to see you still. And so like, the buzz was just kind of snowballing as we were on our way to the bigger gigs. So then we were playing in places like Atlanta, Georgia and things like that, and it was like, oh geez, actually really good turnout kind of thing. And
I think your style would have went down very well down in the
well,
South.
we were very, very much American influenced in that way. Like, it's kind of like we were influenced by the kind of Anglophile English version of American blues, R&B, rock and roll.
Because Atlanta would have
soul music and all that sort of stuff was all factoring into what we were listening to,
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely had that dance factor. When you hear that music, you want to get up,
you
want to move,
you want to dance. And the whole point of the gigs for us as well was influenced by bands like Dr. Feelgood and The Who and all that. You're going out and it's full throttle. It's like full punch in the face from the first song.
From the get-go,
and it's kind of like, we used to try and go like, how many songs can we get away with going straight from one to another without having a heart attack, that you're like, it's nearly like you'd be finishing the song, the big finish, go boom, 2, 3, 4, straight into the next song. So how long can you keep that going, keep it?
Well, you've done 9 shows in 3 days.
Yeah, exactly.
You done it.
Exactly.
For any of you out there to see that the energy that this man would perform with is absolutely incredible to see. He's done 9 shows in 3 days.
That's nuts, man.
It's so we were, and again, it's funny that even being the little bit younger that I was then, that's going to be 10 years ago now. This time 10 years ago we were doing that.
That's crazy.
So even the younger I was 16 then. So like the added advantage of the youth thing, or maybe 17 it was then, the added advantage of being that bit younger, you do have that kind of energy reserves, you know what I mean, that even now I'd be a bit more like, how long am I playing for? You know, that kind of like...
Yeah, what, 3 shows today?
Yeah.
And tomorrow
and
the
tomorrow,
next day?
yeah. Not so sure about that. But, but we were just on that, as you say, the whirlwind of it.
Yeah.
And by the time we reached Toronto, we were about 8 or 9 days out of hitting New York and doing a couple of New York gigs and doing David Letterman. So that was a mad thing. And we did Conan O'Brien as well in LA too. So it was all...
Did you play on the Universal Studios?
We did, yeah. So the weird thing was, it was Paramount Pictures.
Paramount.
So the weird thing, the Conan O'Brien show was on the Warner Brothers lot.
Yeah.
So I
that's
don't know,
what I was on.
you know, like Animaniacs.
Yeah.
With the Warner Brothers Tower.
Yeah.
So it was and like Looney Tunes and all that. So it was like that's the first thing my
Pinch
brain
me moment.
Yeah. So my
You're
brain
waiting for one of them to jump out of the tower and go back into it.
So like straight away what that, and I think, I don't know whether that's my warped reference point, that I'm not thinking, people think there's glamour, people jump to the glamorous, the celebrities, that and this and that, and my straight up thing, I was like, the Looney Tunes tower, that's like, you know,
this is Hollywood.
Yeah, you know, like when like
in the brain.
Yeah, when like Daffy
like
Duck
every
and
other
Porky
day.
Pig are trying to get past the in the studio security in those cartoons,
yeah,
and all that. So like that's what I was thinking of, was like all them cartoons and all them things you grew up with.
You come in the gate and we're like, today we're gonna
yeah. Same thing we do every night, and so that was where my head was at, and we were like, fucking Warner Brothers Tower and this and that, and seeing all the sound stages and all the
so much going on there.
Yeah, and all the other TV shows are being made in the other studios and all that, and so that was for Conan, and then we also did a gig on the Paramount Pictures.
Yeah.
Lot.
I read that.
Yeah. Met a guy called Randy Spendlove.
Randy Spendlove.
Was the man who organised the gig. I can say that now and make fun of his name, because I'm never going to be there again. So
he must have got some.
Yeah.
Good time at school, I think.
Yeah, I think he was like he was a lovely guy. He was a really nice fella. But he came in and he was making a joke of it. He was like, "Hey guys, Randy Spendlove. That means something different for you guys." You know? Not in the American lingo.
He knew the crack.
Yeah.
So fast forward, then you have a new project now.
Yeah. So, well, I'll just say what happened in Toronto.
Sorry, we didn't get there.
Yeah, we never got there. We went all around the houses. That was my fault, bringing us all around the houses.
No, that's good. Let it go, man.
9 days before the Letterman show, basically, on stage in Toronto, whacked the cymbal.
Yeah.
I'd been having pains in my hands anyway, coming off stage, like, my tendons in my hands are really sore. And I was trying to keep an eye on it, but then crashed out in the cymbal, and I thought, it feels like there's like cold water running all over my hand. That's really weird.
Afraid to look.
Yeah, afraid to look, but I did look, and this finger was like hanging out of its socket, like kind of thing.
Compound fracture,
that kind of thing. And it was like
poking through.
Yeah, purple and blue and every other colour except the colour it was meant to be. And so it was like hanging out in 3 times the size. And still kind of played for another little while just like that. Just like tapping, like as in, you know, doing like quarter notes on every, just you know, crashing the cymbal just to try and keep something happening. And like the tour manager and all, my dad was there roadieing for us, so they were running on trying to spray it with this stuff and all that. And basically, long story short, we cancelled all the stuff leading up to Letterman, and by the time we did Letterman, I was probably still only able to play one song through without
pain and
just
blood and everything. Probably.
And so even the morning of Letterman, my finger was still in a splint. And then I ended up, it was cortisone injections that cured me in the end, which it's when we, after New York, I think we went to the West Coast, we went to San Francisco and all that, and like the gigs kind of resumed because I was able to play again. But it was because I was injected with this cortisone stuff that they were saying all the baseball players, like because they have the bat, your tendons get fucked from playing baseball. So that was the cure. That was the cure in the end.
That was the magic sponge.
Yeah. Oh, there's a fella out in San Francisco who has the cure there.
He's the cure of the tendinitis there in the finger.
Yeah, and it turned out cortisone injections is the cure.
Wow. Yeah, that's some crazy stuff. But like you weren't missing that opportunity of playing a Letterman.
No, so that was the whole thing. So
if the finger was hanging off,
so I was like
done
taking 25 steroids in a day to try and, you know, like all these medications I was put on to try and the whole idea was everyone was going Letterman. This is like this.
You
can't
gotta
be.
do this.
Yeah. And it was like,
You conquered that adversity, man.
thankfully, thankfully. And if it had been, thankfully, even it was like, as I say, a week or 10 days before, not 2 days before. You know what I mean? If it had been just that slight bit different, you know, you would have been really up shit creek, I think, you know, trying to make it happen, you know. Probably would have ended up, you know, my whole arm would have gone in or something like that, you know.
Yeah, you compensate then with something
Yeah,
else.
yeah,
and
yeah,
end up
yeah.
having other niggles and other injuries. And
Exactly. So I took to wearing, after that, for the next probably 9 months, you know, the heel patches that women get for wearing high heels.
Yeah.
I used to put them on my fingers and bandage my fingers up.
Tape them.
Yeah, for like the next couple of months.
Vintage Lars Ulrich.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah. And so it was like high heel shoe, fucking spongy things.
It worked.
That was what worked. So we used to run to the chemist before the gigs and get them, and just like the base of your finger, just stick them on and bandage them up.
Yeah.
That's what saw me through in the end.
Before we move on, I just want to ask you one question about like obviously the hype was huge.
Yeah.
Coming back to Cavan then.
Yeah.
Seeing your friends.
Yeah.
What was it like? How did people did they
That was kind of my favourite bit nearly, was the coming home after being away, you know what I mean? Because it was nice that there was
you know, like the Irish thing, oh dude.
yeah, well, I'm sure.
prick.
Yeah.
That boy was over in America.
Yeah.
Giving it the big one.
Yeah.
Thinking he's the big fella.
Yeah.
People
So
were cool though.
people were very cool. Everyone, all our friends and family were very cool about it. Maybe there might have been people maybe more removed. They might have been a bit begrudging or something. That's all.
Yeah.
That's par for the course.
That's-
really,
of
you know,
course.
in that kind of way, that there's going to be somebody like
You
that.
get that
But
early,
even-
you get that won't last. That
Yeah.
early music crack.
But-
Exactly.
but yourselves-
Yeah.
Yous were still settled. Yous had a good.
Yeah, we're totally settled in Cavan and everything. That was the whole.
But I mean,
thing,
there was
getting
no
back to ba-
ego. Yous were settled.
No, yeah. Like, I mean, cause we kind of had the Cavan thing. I think again there was the big influence there with, like, again, formative thing of watching music documentaries and getting into the world of bands that we loved. So bands like the Undertones, we'd have been huge fans of. I remember seeing the Undertones thing really early, just as we started touring. I remember getting really into the Undertones and watching their documentary, and their whole thing was they never left Derry, and they still live in Derry now. Like, we actually did get to play with them and stuff like that, but along the way I played festivals with them and stuff like that, and they were always based in Derry. They always had the same friends, always lived in and around home. That was their whole kind of thing, and it was all that real ordinary Irish lads wearing, like, you know, Doc Martens and half-mast jeans and all that. And then Dr. Feelgood was like that as well. They were Canvey Island down in Essex was where they were from, and they were very, like, closed shop. We're from Canvey Island, that's our thing, this is our whole mythology they built up around the place. They called it Oil City to make it sound more bluesy.
Okay.
And they used to bring journalists down there and get them hammered and you know, take them around on the tour of Oil City, because it was like a real
Industrial
real
area.
industrial, like,
Yeah.
island in the Thames estuary with all these oil tankers, things like that. And they used to say, it's like the Mississippi Delta, and it's like this and that and the other, and bring, you know, it's like they'd bring the party to them, as opposed to going to where the other thing was. And so I always kind of hated that thing of, if you're in London or New York or whatever, we ended up chasing the party of where's it happening.
We gotta be where it's at.
Yeah. I was always totally anti that. I was like, fucking, we'll bring it with us. You know, that kind of thing was the way we looked at it, and I probably was very much the culprit of that. I was the one pumping that attitude out at that time the most strongly out of everybody, probably. There was, you know, we were really kind of wary of everything all the time, and just wanted
it definitely sounds like you had a good structure behind you from day one, like, and you,
thankfully,
between yourselves as well, it seems like
yeah.
you all had a good mindset of, let's not fuck this up.
Yeah, and I think genuinely just a more of a kind of a, I don't know what that is about the mindset we were in or whatever, but we'd be more wary of things than we would be, like, jumping in whole hog.
Because,
you know,
the smoke and mirrors, man, a lot of people go for it.
Yeah, oh, totally.
You can be fooled by it.
Yeah. And I mean, some of us, as time went on, some of us might have partied more than others, like, you know what I mean, and that all goes on as well.
Yeah, of course.
But it was very
I
much.
think that's all part of the experience.
Yeah, but it was very much in the kind of normal way of, like,
Yeah, it's
you know,
very hard not to.
yeah, and, like, you know, if people some people want to stay up and have a drink and do whatever, and some people are fucked and from the gig and thinking, well, we have to be on the road whatever time in the morning. It becomes that kind of routine, really. It becomes like, you know, because it's something you do. We did it like solid for like 8 years or something like that. We just we're gigging and gigging and gigging. It just becomes, you start thinking more about, well, where am I going to get food? Where are we going to eat? How far away is the hotel from the venue? How much time do I have when I get to the hotel? How much time do I have to shave and shower and, you know, get me stage clothes ready? You know, you're doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's your day. You know,
Yeah.
It becomes more of a kind of a, you get to the hotel that you're staying in, you plonk on the bed, you know, you watch telly for a bit maybe, or just fuck around, maybe doze off on the bed for a while, and you're like, oh fuck, we have to go in for sound check, and you have to go and do it, and it's just like,
It was quite structured, like,
that's
in a
just
way.
it just becomes like life. It just becomes like, you know, and then
The
you're
door
thinking,
knocks you up.
yeah. So it just becomes
Go to bed
like
to fuck with
yeah,
you.
and it's like, yeah, fucking your man's not answering the phone, and, you know, as in like
Yeah.
someone, whoever's staying in the other room, somebody's, you know, got the time wrong. We were the van's picking us up in 5 minutes, and one of the
Yeah.
lads is only just getting in the shower, and it's all that kind of.
Because you recorded some of that stuff, didn't you?
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
So Pete, the bass player, you have to give him all the credit for that.
Yeah, I seen
'Cause
that.
Yeah.
I think it was actually Toronto. There was footage of he's in the hotel and stuff, getting up. Just what you just said.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, you have to give Pete total credit for that, because he got very into cameras and editing videos and things like that as things went on. So the last American tour was he fully documented it, and he called it the surprisingly dull adventures of the Strypes.
Yeah.
Which is that's pretty much what and like cue YouTube comments. Nothing surprising about these lads being dull. What, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
There's always a few of them.
yeah. But it was all part of the crack, and so I actually I have very fond memories of them videos and things, because to be honest, you look at them, that's pretty much, if you want to know what it was like, that's pretty much it. And any kind of entertainment by that stage, because we were just a working band, so we'd had the buzz of celebrities name dropping you and this and that. But by the time we did them videos, that had kind of passed. That time had passed, as in like the celebrities had given us the endorsement. They're not going to give you the endorsement all day, every day for 8 years.
Yeah.
You know, so it just kind of settles into a groove then. And I kind of enjoyed it more after the hype. The hype kind of lasted maybe 18 months, 2 years. If I was to be really candid, I think the second album kind of killed the hype a wee bit, but because I don't think it was that good.
Okay.
But that was due to record label interference and things like that. But we just had settled into the groove of, we're a working band. We have a year full of tours, and we have our audience, and we're releasing music, and you're doing that's the thing that sorry about that. That's the thing that I wanted to do. I didn't want to be like, you know, let's say we had like celebrity endorsements from people like let's say, like, here's a really weird example. So the first time we played in LA, we played in the Troubadour, which is the big spot.
Yeah.
Big venue.
And Elton John was mad into us at this stage, and he owned the rock.
He was quoted, wasn't he, saying like these were the next best
we
thing?
were the lads.
basically.
Yeah. And that kind of thing, it's funny, because even when those things happened, there was part of me that was going, you're saying we're going to be this, we're going to do that. And I was saying, but we're not, though. We're just not. Because we're like these random lads from Cavan that just have managed to fluke this thing of being particularly gelling together.
I don't think it was a fluke, man.
Oh, yeah, but you know what I mean, that it just kind of happened.
Yeah, okay.
And we were...
you feel when, as you said earlier in the interview, if there was no plan, or that
no
wasn't
plan,
really the direction you were playing music, there was no aspiration in the beginning to say, man,
I want to be a famous rock star.
No,
we're going to do this.
No, the aspiration was like, I'd love to do that. I'd love to cover that song. I'd love to do a really good set, get a really good set together, and you know, it was more like, what are we going to wear on stage? And are we going to put together a really cool gig? And look at that, I want to fucking, you know, Dr. Feelgood did that. I want to copy that. I want to do this. I want to do that. And all the kind of just pure teenage kind of doing it for the love of it, you know, obsessed.
Yeah.
And because I'm throwing the word nerdy around again, I think we were very, very nerdy and very anal music fans. It wasn't like, you know, if I do this, you know, all the girls going to fancy me and all this stuff. It was it wasn't the thinking behind it. It was like, or being a poser or anything like that. It was really kind of like, you know, push, you know, like, you know, getting our, you know, pushing ourselves to get to the, you know, get like, you know, get kind of like an energy or get a kind of a, you know, a dynamic that we kind of thought was like the bands we were into, you know, that kind of thing.
Stuff the girls don't give a fuck about. The Ringo played a Ludwig kid. I got to play a Ludwig kid.
It was much more like it was.
What size hi hats did he use? What crash cymbal did he use? It's like, oh, you've lost.
Yeah. No, we were much more on the kind of, you know, and if I mean, like, if you can sort that side of it out along the way later on, that's great. But if we were much in the early days, we were much more like, you know, as you say, well, it was during the sessions for Beatles for Sale that George Harrison switched from his Gretsch Tennessean back to his Gretsch 365 Country Gentleman. You know, it's like totally that kind of level of nerdy, techie, all about all that sort of stuff. And just because we were coming from that it was like a very internalized, obsessive place, we weren't projecting out of, oh, I want to be playing here this time next year. I want to be this time next year we'll be millionaires. It was never that.
This time next year we'll be millionaires, Rodney.
That's what I was thinking. There was never that kind of. There was no Del Boys in the band really.
But you're still at that everyone's a winner moment.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
What can't speak can't lie.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? Yeah. So I suppose that's the kind of unusual thing about it, that we were more kind of lost where we were coming from with the question originally there.
With Elton John.
Oh yeah, people endorsing us. Yeah. So saying we were going to be the next big thing and the next big this and that. Because we never in our heads thought we're going to be the next fucking big thing. We honestly never thought that, which means we probably didn't have it in us to be the next big thing. As in, we got a level of success that we were fucking chuffed to bits with, and we were like, this is amazing. We have an audience, we're touring, you know, we've done some amazing things. We've been on telly, we've been on the radio, we've done all the checklist things.
Yeah, you've done it all.
You know, like, and it was nearly just like, wow, ticking that off. Who'd have thought we'd have done any of those things? That's amazing.
You've done it all very fast.
Yeah, all very fast. So I think because there wasn't that drive of like, you know, we're going to be getting the sound of the summer, the next big hit thing, it's going to be us, man. That was never there. It was never in me, and it was never like a motivator, a driving thing. It was a pressure. It was an external pressure. From later on, and stuff. You know,
I'm sure you had that label. You know, there's going to be your name in lights. Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. There was all that kind of bullshit said in the early days, and we were a bit like, yeah, right, us doing Bo Diddley covers is going to be the thing. Like, you know what I mean? It was really like, who the fuck, who's
going to care about this?
Who that's not high is going to care about that? You know, as in like, or is going to think this is the next big thing. Like, it's like, you know, the next morning thinking, what was I thinking, saying the fucking 16-year-old Bo Diddley thing was going to be like the next big fad. You know that, like, you know, like, can you hear yourself back? Like,
hindsight's a great thing though, all the same.
Yeah. But like, I suppose we kind of, that's what we kind of were railing against, I suppose, was the kind of next big thing hype. In a way, we were loving having the experiences, and we were loving doing the bits that we thought were us expressing ourselves and all that. But so the Elton John thing. So Elton was a big endorsee or endorser of us. He endorsed us, and we played the Troubadour, and Elton came to see us at that, and he brought Muse with him and Lana Del Rey with him.
Wow.
So we met all them in the dressing room backstage and all that. And so this is the example I was going to give, that it's like, because it was never in my life plan to be in a dressing room with Elton John and Muse and Lana Del Rey, that was never in my kind of area of what I thought life was going to be like. I didn't strive for it. So when it was over, I didn't care, if you know what I mean. I didn't miss it. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, oh, that's mad. In the way that, let's say...
That was fabulous that it happened.
The conversation with Evan Walsh, part 2.
So I suppose to condense what I was saying, so like, kind of like I was saying there, that because it wasn't in my life plan scheme to be sat with Muse and Lana Del Rey in a dressing room after a gig, it was more like a mad, random, you won't believe what happened to me on the summer holidays kind of experience. Then, oh, this is what life was going to be like. So when all that stuff, I think, because that was kind of the strangest it ever got. Once that buzz kind of died down, and it settled into more being a working band, that's more what I liked.
You didn't like the bells and whistles?
I didn't at all. No. I liked being the working touring club band, playing clubs and colleges and the odd Olympia style gig and things like that, and just doing that. That's what I.
Is it because you just didn't really believe it? Like the likes of these people coming, like you said already, like you thought it was bullshit, like these
kinda, yeah. Well, I mean, like, because again, massively flattered. It's kind of like,
oh man,
gigantically flattered.
You have the best in the world telling you, like, it must be hard to process that.
Yeah.
Do you feel it's hard to separate, Evan, the feeling of everybody wants to be your friend, or?
Well, I think we were kind of so young that there was a bit of separation, that we were never going to be friends with these people anyway. There was that kind of separation. We were kind of like the young lads, and these were all adults, and so there was that divide existed there. But then also, it's also relative to your perception and your values as well, because let's say an example being that's a good example, that like Muse, Lana Del Rey, personally I couldn't name one song by either of them.
Okay.
I've never actually.
It's not your genre.
I've never heard any. I couldn't. Honest to God, just couldn't name one.
I've seen Muse now; they're pretty damn good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and again, I said nothing against.
I know, it's just not your thing.
It's just like if it was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, name a Muse song.
Phone
I'd be
a
like,
friend, call Gavin.
Yeah. And so exactly. Yeah.
No, fair enough.
And same, like let's say people who would be more into. People who were more into pop music, who have been talking about, like, let's say we, if I'm having a conversation with somebody, like we met Ed Sheeran a couple of times, I couldn't give a damn about Ed Sheeran. I have no interest in anything he has done, is doing, or will ever do. Okay. And it's more just like,
it's not your thing.
From a personal music
taste, it just means nothing to me whatsoever. And me not liking him isn't going to hurt him.
No.
He's all right. And so, like, met him a couple of times, and it was just like meeting. It'd be like if you were like talking to someone who was like a golf fanatic, and you met like a really famous golfer, but you didn't know who it was, and the golf fanatic's going, "Did you not know who that was? That's the biggest buzz ever." And I'm going, "Was it?" Yeah. That's how I'd feel about Ed Sheeran or something like that. It'd be like, "Oh, that's that lad. He's famous, and that's the thing." But the fact that through the band we got to meet the guys out of Dr. Feelgood, let's say, for example, Wilfred Johnson, the guitar player, and Dave Edmonds, who's a musician that is like, I've often
that
said,
must have meant something to you from watching them VHS at home
exactly. So
that meant more.
So that would mean 100 million times. I mean the universe compared to meeting Ed Sheeran.
Be the equivalent of us boys meeting Metallica.
Exactly. You're literally in the room, and you're
like and that's your idol. That's your icon.
That's it. So it's like, like exactly, it'd be like, you could meet, like I say, would you rather meet Ed Sheeran or Metallica? It's that kind of thing where it's whatever, if you're a real fan and it means something to you. So it's like, because celebrity meant nothing to me, that wasn't enough of an impressive thing. The fact that we met Dave Edmonds and Wilco Johnson and people like that, that's the buzz that I still can't get my head around, that I'm still like, holy shit. And Jeff Beck and all people like that. But it was more like, I'd put Dave Edmonds on the tip top of meets for me, because I've often said, if I could be if I could like body hop, like quantum leap the program, if I could quantum leap into somebody's another musician and be another musician, to be Dave Edmonds probably. He's just my man in that kind of way.
Sure, icon.
And we actually got to meet him when we did the third album in Rockfield Studios in Wales, which he helped actually set up.
Okay.
So all them big albums, Oasis and everything, have been done there. He was the first guy to record in there. Him and the other guy kind of built the studio, and he had recorded his first album. He played all the instruments and made this thing himself,
Wow.
And so meeting him and hanging out with him for a few hours, which he actually turned up at the end of the sessions for that album, that's, as you say, several universes and galaxies more value in that to me than meeting just famous people who I don't really know who they are, but I've heard of them.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
And to tell that to the general public is like, what, you met Ed Sheeran, you met this, that and the other.
It doesn't make any sense.
Someone who doesn't know who Dave Edmonds is, and you're like, that's probably the pinnacle of my
that's the highlight.
musical journey.
That's as good as it'll ever get, is Dave Edmonds and Wilco Johnson and people like that. That's what it's all about.
It's absolutely incredible
for me, like, you know. And I mean, we met Wilco Johnson and John B. Sparks, the bass player from Dr. Feelgood. So they jammed with us.
That's mad. Like,
yeah. So they got up on stage with us and did a few Dr. Feelgood tunes with us, and it was in the Oyster Fleet Hotel on Canvey Island, like in the middle of the.
That's where they were from.
Yeah. We did a gig there, but it'd be like playing in for anyone who is local, any listeners with any local knowledge. It'd be like playing in the Kilmore Hotel in Cavan or something like that. It's totally
just a little local.
You could there's places like that in every town in England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales. They've all got them, and so it's not like the Troubadour. It's not like anything like that. It was like you could get good pub grub like downstairs, you know, that kind of thing.
Good Swedish
food. Yeah, and it'd
get
be
a
like
pint.
Yeah, and you'd get like Sunday roast probably downstairs with creamy mash.
But that's all you need.
More spuds for the boys there before the
yeah. Oh well, that was another thing. We pretty much scoured everywhere we went. Me and Pete, the bass player in particular, we were kind of thick as thieves, and we just wanted steak and chips everywhere we went. We had no interest in exploring foreign food or expanding our minds or anything like that. It was like...
Well, for all our listeners that have travel plans, Evan has seen most of the world, so if you're looking for recommendations for steak and chips, feel free to hit him up.
Well, funny enough, because we did a lot of work in Japan as well, of course, over these years.
It's definitely something I want to get on to.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely, we can do that now if you like. We can use steak and chips can be the segue, because we used to do Japan a couple of times a year. Like we had a kind of it was the only country we had a bona fide hit single in.
I was going to say, what was that experience like to immerse yourself in the Japanese culture?
Yeah.
There's 20 fanatics.
There's 20 something million people in Tokyo.
Yes, so something mad like that.
It's something that a friend of mine had spoke about before in regards to our music. And I was thinking about, you want to get seen or you want to get heard all over the world. It's like if you focus on breaking one city, which what you guys done, which is fabulous in say Japan as a country, not necessarily one city.
Totally.
Just they talk to you guys
big
like
style.
ducks to water.
Big style. So the Japan thing, I think we were kind of ideally made for Japan, because
that punky kind of stuff.
It's the kind of punky
Your style.
I was going to say they love anything that's kind of
trendy, fashionable. They're huge into that,
and they love Western culture. They love British bands. They love that kind of the fact we had the kind of we had the sort of mod image in the early days, and kind of things like that. We kind of were into that sort of look, or
the sunglasses,
trying to be.
The shirt was
and we were trying to look
like
the Who and bands like that. In the early days, and the Feelgoods and all that. We all had that kind of image, and so we had that image. We had the kind of the long fringes. We had it all at that time. I had the Bob Dylan, John Cooper Clarke. I said I was going for at that time as well, and. So we kind of had the whole kind of gear on, the whole kit and caboodle. By pure fluke, it's exactly the kind of thing that a certain Japanese audience really takes to, and it's that energetic rock and roll. To them, because we're from this part of the world, that has a kind of a British slant. It's like, without getting controversial, to them it's like the Who and the Kinks and the Stones and the Beatles. That's what that says to them. So that's kind of where the attraction, I think, came in. And we had a hit single, by pure. We had a number 7 hit single in Japan. It was the only country we've actually had a hit single in. The rest of the time it's just albums and stuff. I think in the English singles chart we got to 120 with one of the early singles. But there's no singles market in the UK really for that kind of thing. There's no
albums.
Yeah, it's just the album thing, and the singles market in the UK is like solid pop. And that's it. And there's no indie influence or no whatever in the singles chart in the UK really. But we did have a number 7 Japanese hit, and that was the only place, because there's that kind of culture of real culture of respect, and everyone was really real culture. Basically, the whole culture founded on being really sound, basically, and being really nice. But there's also the fanaticism of
big time
waiting at the airport, waiting at the hotel, waiting at this.
Was it just extreme?
So there was people wanting to get signed and pictures and things like that at every stage of your journey. You know what I mean? Like your physical journey from the airport to the hotel to the gig back to the hotel. People wanted souvenirs, they wanted photos. It was kind of the one country without really that cliche.
That pinch me moment of
that cliche really existed, and it was like it wasn't like because everywhere you play, if there's people that are coming to see the gig, you might stop for a picture outside the venue or whatever, and that's all normal. But this was much more of a like, this is the routine. We'll meet you at the airport. We'll follow you to the hotel. It's kind of more. That's more kind of part of the thing for real hardcore fans.
Wow.
And did that end up being a problem when yourself and Pete would go for steak and chips?
Well, that's what I was going to say. So the obviously when you're on the other side of the world, that's when the culinary side of things is more challenging.
Yeah.
If you're like me and I'm very meat and two veg. Very
Cavan dinner.
Very Cavan,
Spuds,
very
roasties.
Exactly. Roasties and everything like that. That's what I'd be craving if I was away. I'm not thinking
sushi.
I'm not. And I'm allergic to a lot of food as well, so it's like it doesn't. Being adventurous in that way doesn't suit me. So, our guy in Japan, we had a kind of a tour manager fella, and he alerted us to the fact that there's an Australian themed steakhouse chain in Japan called the Outback. Outback Steakhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we went for 10 days one time to do all these Japanese cities, and I found the Outback Steakhouse in every single city because our Japanese tour manager fella, he's a great friend of ours still to this day. He's a lovely fella, and he'd be on the money. So he had the address of the Outback Steakhouse before we'd even got there. We were on the bullet train going to the next city, and he was like, Outback Steakhouse is, that many, it's 25 minutes from the hotel or whatever.
You're like, feed me.
Yeah, exactly.
And how long did it take the fans to figure out this now?
I don't think anybody copped us in that. No, I think because the weird thing in Japan as well is that
steak and chips, follow them.
Yeah. So the funny thing
Won't be
is,
fit to go back now after all the Japanese
exactly. And rice balls actually in all the train stations and newsagents, they have little rice balls, little boiled rice kind of stuck together in a packet. And I'd be dead if it wasn't for them. Wouldn't have been anything on throughout the day. I was that young. It was the first time I ever had heartburn. I was in Japan.
You weren't drinking cans of cider.
Out in the field.
It was like I was going like, God, I've had about 8 rice balls today.
Yeah.
But what you call it? So we were always kind of very homely in that way. It was all about familiarity and stuff like that, So. Sorry, I was saying, but the weird thing about Japan is that the gigs are all very early. The gigs are at like 6 o'clock in the evening.
Well, what's the atmosphere like at the gigs? Is it like
really high energy? Actually, once you get them going, because there is more of a culture, as you say, of respect and calmness.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, when you're playing, they'll be moshing and going crazy with the rest of them.
But respectful moshing.
Yeah, and
dancing.
No aggression. I think in this part of the world, moshing comes with a bit of an aggressiveness, which can create a great atmosphere. As long as it's contained
within reason.
Within reason.
Yes.
You want a bit of aggression, you want a bit of, it could go either way here.
It's impossible not to move to your music.
It's just a good thing.
In fairness, like some artists or whatever, it's literally impossible to.
Well, that's good to.
That's like,
good
I feel light of 2 left feet when it comes to that. But you gotta move.
Exactly. So, well, that's the reaction you want, really. So
of course.
Exactly. So they'd have all the moshing and all the stuff, same as this part of the world, but the difference would be when you'd stop playing, they'd stop, and sometimes it'd
silent.
Dead silent sometimes, but really respectful applause. And then, like, if we didn't play or talk, you could literally just go,
wow.
It'd be that quiet. It wouldn't be like people going to the bar, people milling around, and all the kind of inherent rowdiness
that
you'd have
kind
here.
Of respectfulness that comes from their culture.
Yeah. So you wouldn't have had that same kind of rowdiness and kind of people out for a night out, because it's all organised around the last train and bus home.
Yeah, everything's so efficient out there.
They're
right?
infrastructure.
like metronomically organised. So the last bus home or the last train home to wherever the suburbs are in this city are at 7:28.
Everything's
so it's
statistically
all
done,
and
yeah.
everybody's gone and out and home, and then we'd go to the Outback Steakhouse after the gig.
Nice.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
So it was weird. It was kind of backwards because you're doing the gig. You're like thinking, geez, I've only just had me lunch and the gig's nearly we're on in like 2 hours. So then your day is kind of topsy-turvy,
Or was it big arenas out there, or was it? Did I see?
No,
you
it was
festivals.
Oh, yeah, we would have done Fuji Rock Festival, and what was the other one? Asagiri Jam was another festival we did.
They're huge.
Yeah,
Crowds,
massive.
Fuji
Yeah.
Rock. I think did Dermot Kennedy play that last year?
He
Was
probably
playing it
did. He
This
probably
year,
did.
one of the
Yeah,
some
yeah,
Irish
yeah.
acts to get the call for that.
Yeah. Oh, he probably did. And anybody that's kind of doing well like that, it'll kind of come into the orbit of Fuji Rock and bits and bobs. But what was I going to say? Yeah, and Asagiri Jam was another good one. So we would have done them, and then our own gigs would have been what they would have considered clubs, like big clubs. So let's say we do 2 nights in Tokyo, and there might have been 800 people each night, that kind of thing. So most of the venues you're talking 1,000 people max. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'd say probably it's like that kind of level still.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and we would have done maybe 5 or 6 cities, kind of conservative estimate. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
When we'd go over there, we'd go over for 10 days, and you'd kind of maybe you'd do more than that. But yeah, I suppose you'd have promo days as well. You wouldn't be gigging every day. You'd have a day of just doing interviews.
And
And any Japanese television?
Yeah, we did.
That would have been good.
We did Japanese telly with Kiss.
No way.
Yeah, which is really funny. We were on a program called Music Station, which is like the Japanese Jules Holland, basically.
Okay.
But because it's Japanese telly, it's lit like it's morning TV.
Okay.
It's like the Jules Holland of Japan, but it looks more like Sunday brunch.
Ireland
like,
AM.
Yeah, Ireland AM. Like kind of morning TV. It's got that bright, sunny kind of vibe to it.
Sunglasses definitely needed.
Yeah,
A lot of sparkle from Kiss then.
Well, yeah, honest to God. So we did this thing, and we didn't know obviously who was going to be on, but there was all the acts were being introduced at the start. It was like stars in their eyes. It was like you come out through the smoke kind of thing. And so the presenter would be talking away in Japanese, and then he'd say, so-and-so's going to be on, and this Japanese person come out through the smoke, and another Japanese band. We were on with a Japanese boy band, a boy band and girl band, and the boy band had 10 fellas in it. And then there was a Japanese girl band called J42, and we were like, why are they called J42? And it was because there was 42 girls in the band.
Ah, no.
Yeah. So that was kind of mad, and
Lucky JJ72 hadn't got 72 members.
yeah, good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah.
And the 101ers didn't have, but it was like 42 young ones in this band that would do this massive choreographed dance routine. And I don't even think they were singing. I think that was just the gimmick, was just look at all these women doing this choreographed dance routine. And I think there was an age cap, as in when one member hit 25, she was out.
You're out.
And another one was brought in.
Leonardo DiCaprio must have been the manager of that band.
Must have been. Yeah.
Good.
In his side time.
Yeah. That was, he took his cue from J42, all right. But so that was a way of pop music, Svengali attitude we hadn't encountered before.
Yeah.
But so we were coming up, we'd all go up these stairs and appear through the smoke sort of thing. So there was all the Japanese acts, whoever was doing this, whoever was doing that. And then we came through the smoke, and then behind us came Kiss, which was really funny because the lads were in their full gear, and we met them in the full gear, and their platforms really were a couple of feet off the ground, and full makeup, full shebang, and that was the only time we had any interaction with them, and because obviously they were going along because they were the big act, they were saying hello to everybody else that was on it. And so Gene Simmons was like, oh, you guys, Irish, okay, all that sort of stuff. And not a conversation or anything like that, just a kind of a hello sort of thing. But he was like, you are Japanese, where are you from, kind of thing. Yeah. And what was I going to say?
Gene Simmons was like, where's good for steak and chips?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
If it's Western dining you're after, I'm your man. Yeah. And so we had some great times in Japan,
man,
good experiences. And so we did did a couple of TV things like that. And everybody, it was always fantastic. Like we had a fantastic Japanese label, as in the people working
when you were out there.
Yeah, were all really brilliant people.
Did you do any other countries out there in Asia? Or was it?
We did Hong Kong once, and that was like a festival called Clock and Flap, I think it was called.
Okay.
And another weird thing about that was it turned out that the festival, the word Clock and Flap doesn't mean anything. It's a made up word, but it's what people on that part of the world would think a Western word sounds like, in the way like an English word. So in the way that
what would they watch?
So in the way that we might have a perception of like Chinese or Japanese without knowing how to speak it.
I get you, yeah.
So their perception of English or European languages would be like clock and flap. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You know, and part of the process, the interview process, we were doing promo before we went on stage, and everybody on the bill had to come up with a definition for the word clock and flap, what they thought the word clock and flap could potentially mean. God knows what we said. It's lost to the mist of time. But so we did that in Hong Kong, and
did you ever go down around Australia?
Once, yeah. We did. Well, we did a really punishing regime one time where we went to Japan and did one festival, then flew the next day to Australia via Hong Kong, did 3 or 4 gigs in Australia, and then flew back to Japan, did another festival,
on the way
and
home.
then went home.
That was a test like
Yeah.
Austin.
Yeah.
I'd say
So-
that was a week's sleep needed after that.
Yeah, and definitely a week's sleep I didn't get. That was the one time I never had jet lag, but that one time I was fucked with the jet lag. It was really bad.
That's completely different time zones, isn't it? Like even just that short flight.
Upside down or right side up, or
Exactly.
don't know where you're coming and
even it's
going.
long from Tokyo or Japan to Australia.
Yeah.
Already, yeah. You're in that hemisphere, but it's still
You're going
really
down.
long haul
Yeah.
flights. I remember I watched The Office for the first time on that on that flight, the English Office.
So then, what year then did it all come to a halt?
To a halt. Well, it was really 2018. We decided to be winding it down. Throughout 2017, we were thinking of it. We put our third album out and all that, but the kind of wind was going out of the sails a wee bit just because we've been at it for so long, and unless you had a really renewed sense of direction, unless you really were like, well, we really are, we're 3 albums in, we've toured it did okay, we kind of had settled into our kind of little groove. As I say, we did Japan, we did all American tour, we did all the bits, and I suppose when all that came to the album cycle, as they call it, came to an end, which is like 18 months. We'd been thinking about it as we were on tour, because it was getting punishing being on the road for that many years without any kind of break, really.
Especially in your formative years.
In your formative years, and we were formed doing that, if you know what I mean. So we did have, and we had, I mean, we weren't the hardest working band in show business, but we were pretty hard working, and we do like a couple of 100 gigs a year, that kind of thing.
Man, that's work. Like,
Yeah.
That's work.
And we weren't like, it wasn't like, oh, I haven't seen home in months. We were coming and going a lot and all that, and it was good, but there was kind of a thing of like, if the band was to keep going and have any more sort of head of steam in it, there'd need to be some sort of creative
Just
overhaul.
how I'm feeling
Like
it.
a relocation,
Like a creative overhaul, as in like, renewed sense of direction and renewed sense of, well, this is the next step, this is where we want to go. And we probably just didn't all feel the same about it, as in like, let's say, Josh, the guitar player, he's still making music, which would be very different from the Strypes music. He was moving in his own direction, which is fair enough for him, and I think he needed to go and do that, that kind of thing. And I think there's a little bit of the last Strypes album, me and Pete, the bass player, did half of it, and Josh wrote the other half of it, and Josh had written a lot of songs before that for the band, but it was a little bit like, half of our thing and half of his thing, because we were the two writing camps, and they weren't 100 million miles apart, but you could see how
the separations and themes.
you could see how another album, you could try and go in to make a fourth album, and
different directions.
The directions would have gotten even more starkly different. I think, you know, me and Pete, our stuff was kind of, we were carrying on that sort of, well, we were very influenced by Stiff Records, this again like kind of punk new wave label that had a lot of stuff, British acts in the 70s and late 70s and 80s, and we were really kind of on the Stiff Records vibe. Josh was probably moving into his own vibe, which I probably leave it best up to him to describe it, but you know, I think you could listen to what we're up to now. I'm doing this and Josh is doing his thing. You could just listen to what we're up to now and you kind of get a bit of a picture of the direction. It was one party was going in one direction, the other direction, and it wasn't before. I was kind of like, just kind of again like having that bit of distance, as in like to be able to look at the situation that we kind of practiced a lot. I think it's kind of like, you know, we could call it now and it'd kind of end pretty well. You know what I mean? We'd have kind of...
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like
there was going to be a conflict of interest in the right.
The
whole thing.
Yeah, and instead of
take the good out of it.
Yeah, instead of it becoming a thing where people go more and more off in different directions and it comes to blows or comes to the classic musical differences break up in the studio, you know, instead of having things break down, you know, and you know, we kind of had already had a rocky experience on the second album because there was a lot of label interference and a lot of stuff like that going on, and you know, I'm not fond of that second album, so it's like, you know, because it kind of, to me, it feels like it's neither one thing or another, and it's kind of half, you know what I mean? It's
well, they're putting your twist on it.
Yeah, it's kind of half.
Like, this is what you want me to play. So instead of being
Evan
no the creator, it was nearly like Evan the hired gun for his own band.
Well, kind of, yeah. And we were all four of us were hired guns for the band that we'd started. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so it was a bit kind of like, you know, I remember there was, you know, comments from on high about, you know, every little minute detail was under scrutiny, which it wasn't like that for the other two albums. Yeah, you know, so I think it just wasn't the buzz really that we had gone into it for. And obviously Josh was writing the songs at that time. Pete had written a few, but the majority of the strain was put on Josh to meet those people's expectations
from the labels.
So they kind of tried to divide and conquer a little bit in that sense. I think that's the game the label would play, and you know, we came out to the side of it, which is great. And then the third album, we kind of got back to doing our own thing. But you kind of see on the last time, it's kind of like more like ourselves, but also a bit like it was more of a last hurrah than it was a rejuvenated thing. It was more like, well, the last album was such a balls. We have to try and we'll have to band together, and we went from. We basically went from Please Please Me to Abbey Road in 3 albums. You know, or Get Back in 3 albums. You know what I mean? That it's like, you know, you kind of go to whatever that particular project's lifespan. It just kind of felt like we were spent collaborating in that way. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, and when you've been doing it with the same people since you were literally
12,
a Gossan, literally a child. You know, it's a bit weird.
You've grown with these guys, and then everybody has their own direction or their own feelings.
Yeah, and somebody else thinks, oh, I wouldn't mind. Like some of the boys aren't in the music business at all anymore, and you know, people start thinking, no, I wouldn't mind going off and doing this, and wouldn't mind going off and doing that.
The movies.
Oh yeah, Rocket Man. Yeah. That was our kind of last hurrah, really. Yeah. There was the last hurrah in the studio was the third album, and it was a bit like I think it was nearly like the last album was such a balls, we have to kind of get back to ourselves and do one again that's more about what we're about. And it was kind of a compromise in a nice way of what everybody was at, and it was kind of like, well, if this album really gels and we really are feeling it and we're thinking, fuck yeah, we could make 10 more albums like this, let's go for it, let's do it. But we kind of had reached the end of the 18 months of touring it, and we were a bit like, we've kind of done it. Yeah, that's kind of it. Yeah, you know what I mean. We've kind of done all we can do with this, really. And any change, any big creative change that would need to take place, as you say, you couldn't get everybody. Everybody would be in a different camp about that anyway. So we kind of decided we were going to break up, and then did Rocket Man kind of as a
farewell,
as a one last hurrah, because when are you going to be asked to be in a fucking movie? Like, never. You know what I mean? So because of the Elton John connection with us, and Elton was always very great, very good to us in that way. You know, whenever we had any interaction with him, he was really supportive and all that sort of stuff. And so we were delighted, we were thrilled to get the finger pointed at us to say maybe you could be the 60s band in the first bit of Rocket Man when he's touring with the soul group in the back in the soul singers and all that.
I watched it today actually.
That was one of my favorite experiences of the whole band, actually, was doing that, because I was always fascinated with movies and music movies in particular. Like, again, the same way as like me saying like the Beatles movies and the Monkees and all that was like my formative childhood thing about bands. I still have that now. I'm still obsessed with like rock and roll movies. I think are a huge interest of mine. Yeah. And there's loads of brilliant ones, loads of really gritty ones from down the years and all that. But it was kind of like, oh God, we get to even do our little moment like that.
Yeah.
Get to do the little.
But it was a nice, like,
the little kind of bit in the movie kind of thing. It was great.
And it was a nice way to maybe finish the whole thing
that
off.
chapter off. Yeah. And funny enough, another big buzz was that it was directed by a guy called Dexter Fletcher, who's the great director, but he's also one of the kids from Bugsy Malone.
No way. Wow.
Babyface in the film Bugsy Malone.
Yeah.
And they're going, give this to Babyface, give this to Babyface. The little kid that gets, that's him. He directed Rocket Man.
Jesus.
So that was a buzz as well.
Yeah.
So that's like, geez, I seen you when I was a kid on the telly. How many Bank Holiday Mondays did I see him on telly? And now he's like, you're like working with him in a film. He's like getting you to do like, mime to this song,
Yeah, and Dr. Feelgood, like you said, you used to watch that, and you got to do
that
exactly,
yeah. So there was a lot of them kind of weird little moments of like
full circle moments.
Yeah. And that's kind of the biggest nearly kick of it was like, it's like us, these fucking shit kicking lads, just ended up in this situation where it's like, oh fuck, that's the lad of that band that we like, and that's the lad. So it was
cool.
It was nice like that,
So then the new chapter started then.
Yeah. So post COVID really is the kind of Savage Hearts thing really coming about.
You took a bit of time out.
Yeah, well, myself and some of the other lads from the Strypes, we collaborated on a few bits and bobs, a few tracks and things like that. And the COVID time, we released them during COVID, and it was kind of like, it was a funny time really for everybody, and everybody's whole lives got turned inside out and upside down. Yeah. So there was that kind of horrible, that kind of horrible sort of like nothing time. Unknown
scary.
Time. Yeah, scary, nothing time. So after being through a couple of years with that, and then we'd done a few bits together, some of the other Strypes, me and the other Strypes lads, when we got to the end of that time, kind of felt like that project belonged in that time. And the other lads also, we all had, again, we were just kind of thinking, some of us wanted to take time out. Some of the lads are thinking about, career change, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So like, things that come about in life as well, at that sort of
life
stage.
terms, and life gets in the way.
Yeah. There was a good bit of that coming into it. There was a good bit of that. So like when you get to after COVID then, like 2022, I had a load of demos basically done, not just ideas for songs, and I'd kind of done me first bit of, I'd done little bits and bobs of writing for the Strypes, more musical ideas than lyrics or anything like that. And myself and Pete had collaborated on about half of the last album. And so there was like a load of musical ideas basically that I had that I'd never finished off.
Yeah.
And I basically whacked them all down, all the different ideas, all the riffs, all the bits that when I was noodling around with the guitar or the bass or whatever.
Yeah.
And ended up having, finished them off myself. Some of them I just kind of turned into fully fledged songs, and some of them I kind of started collaborating with pals basically from other bands. So because we were in the Strypes for them years, you're locked into a dynamic really where you're not going to go off and collaborate with people in other bands necessarily, for the main project.
Yes.
So like there's a couple of great bands, fantastic bands that we toured with. Raglins were one, if you ever heard of Raglins, and the Mighty Steph, if you ever heard of them.
Right.
We would have toured with them a lot during the Strypes, and we would have played in Dublin together in the early days, and then when we went on tour we would have brought them out to open for us, and there would have been all that sort of stuff. We became really close mates anyway with the lads in those bands over the years. And two of the guys, the main songwriters in both those bands, Stephen Murphy from the Mighty Steph and Steve Kelly from Raglan's, are two really good chums. And me and Steve ended up collaborating. He lives in Spain, but I started sending the ideas over to him, and I'd never done that before with someone who was totally outside of that Strypes camp, and actually getting really some brilliant
work together.
Work.
It was starting to click.
As in getting some really exciting work done. As in, like, I was really starting to go, geez, these ideas that I've had for ages that could never find a home for them or could never. And I had a very kind of like, I still had a lot of energy in my head for band stuff rolling around of like, you know, like, as I say, being influenced by a lot of the kind of contemporary, influenced by a lot of contemporary garage rock and psych rock and all that that's happening in America at the moment, like Ty Segall and King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and the ACs and Naked Giants, Nude Party, loads of them bands. There's a huge, brilliant scene in America at the minute of these brilliant kind of garage punk psych.
It's coming back.
Kind of bands. Yeah, it's brilliant, really, really vibrant scene. And I started getting really into that stuff and really excited by it. And I was kind of thinking, fuck, that's the kind of thing now that I'm not in a band. That's the kind of stuff I'm really getting off on at the minute.
That's what I'm feeling. This is where I want to go with
I'm getting off on that, and the idea of kind of merging those contemporary influences, merging those contemporary influences with the other influences that I've had my whole life. Yeah. You know, and kind of working it all in there. So collaborating with Steve and then collaborating with Steph, the Mighty Steph, you know, we both started with the two. I started writing with both the lads, you know, sending ideas back and forth because we were all living in different places. And it was a really nice buzz and a very different buzz, and it was that kind of thing of bringing in different influences that even things that, like, maybe, let's say, you know, like when you're in a band like the Strypes, let's say it was very much a democratic thing, so it ends up being like a quarter of the influence ends up kind of being mine, and you know, we're all kind of
you had your freedom back, maybe.
And it's kind of, it's the sum of its parts that makes it. So now this is kind of like, you know, even if in the Strypes, if the Strypes had been a dictatorship and I had been the dictator, it probably wouldn't have sounded a million miles away from the Savage Arts, where, like, it's not 100 million miles removed from the Strypes at all, but it's probably just in a slightly different, it's in the same housing estate as the Strypes. It just doesn't live at the same address. It's like,
it's at the bottom of the road.
Yeah. Where, like, there's the energy and the, you know, like the harmonica.
It's definitely there, man.
You know, the kind of blues influence and all that sort of stuff.
Harmonica.
And even what you've done with Big Hunk of Love.
Oh
yeah.
That
a bit of a drive.
And those kind of covers, EPs and all that, like, we just whacked them up because, like, that was kind of getting the band together, and I was kind of trying to get a lineup happening, and just demoing at home and just messing around and just doing covers and stuff for the crack. So
you produced a lot of it then, did you?
Yeah, well, some of those cover things, that's just me playing all the instruments, and I just layered them up in the room, in the bedroom.
Wow.
And kind of did this kind of psychobilly, weird, demented singing over it, and you know, kind of like, I suppose, if I had been maybe the dictator of the Strypes, that's how full throttle I would have liked it to have gone.
You would have taken it.
You know what I mean?
Level.
But obviously, other people have other ideas, and it ends up being a kind of a more of a democratic kind of blend of influences. Yeah. So, but that kind of more full throttle meathead garage vibe is more my kind of style. Yeah. And you know, like with the single with Gang War and Speed Kills and all that, it's kind of, I think Gang War in particular, it kind of brings it into that more contemporary garage rock. Ty Segall kind of influence, you know. I was kind of coming, you know, that's kind of more what, and even people have very flatteringly likened it to the Stranglers, which is that kind of, you know, I'd love that kind of vibe as well, you know. So it's just more what comes naturally to me, and again, no more than the early Strypes days, I'm just literally doing it because I want to do it. No other reason than that. It's that thing of, like, you know, is
it fun again for you?
Great fun, absolutely brilliant fun. Yeah. And like the band, the lineup that we have at the moment is brilliant. Like, you know, it's all a lot of local fellas actually from Ryan Cavan and stuff like
Terry
that.
Brady.
Yeah, Terry played a fantastic harmonica player and really talented all rounder, I'd say. Yeah, but he's an extraordinary harmonica player actually. He's really played with Terry in a couple of things.
It brings a lot to your music, like in Gang Wars. It's full throttle.
Yeah, and that's always kind of been my sort of. I've always kind of swung in the direction of that, you know, and like, I'd been big into bands like there's a band called the Jim Jones Review, who were like kind of like, they were early 2010s, late 2000s, early 2010s they were around, and they were like a kind of a sort of psycho fuzzed up, you know, full throttle version of like, even more full throttle than it already was, like 50s rock and roll. Like it'd be like taking Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, which is already full throttle, you know, burn your house down kind of stuff. And stuff that got me going, but they took it and did it in that kind of modern garage rock revival.
Distortion.
Ramped up the distortion because the technology moves on. Yeah. So they kind of did it like, it would be like, who would you say it'd be like? It'd be like just that, like a real fuzzed up anarchic punk band playing Little Richard style rock and roll. So it was big, very, very influenced by that kind of stuff, you know, and that kind of
comes across.
Yeah, that kind of sums up what a lot of this kind of project was. Even the songs were born out of, and now there's other, as stuff comes out, there's other influences in there, but that initial burst of the first single and all that, that's very much the side of it that's being lent into at the minute.
We look forward to see the journey that Savage Hearts is trying to go on.
Yeah, hopefully now it'll be a fun one now. That's the main thing about it, is because the Strypes we've done all the kind of we've been through all the different phases that a band that a lot of bands that get signed go through in a very short space of time. So I kind of have no.
You're back on the wave and just see where it goes.
I'm back on the wave of just doing it because I want to do it, and it's the kind of thing of like, you know, I'm not thinking, oh, I got to get back up there and I got to get back doing this, I got to get back doing that. I just want to do it. Just want to do it. And I just want to be in a band and play gigs and be in a good band and play songs you like playing, release songs you like, you know, produce music, you know, get more into the production side as well, and really produce music that you love, you know, that you really thrilled to bits with, like, you know, I actually love what I'm producing, and you know, this is the kind of stuff that I'm completely want to be doing, and I'm just putting it out there. And if you like it, that's fantastic. You know, see you at the gigs if you like it. You know, that kind of thing.
Definitely, that's awesome. You know, like, isn't it? It's good.
Well, hey, it's just doing your own thing, doing what you want to do.
Yeah. And it's like, if you want to come and enjoy it, the door's open, but it's kind of just there to be enjoyed, you know, for whatever.
It's far better having those out than having them on a hard drive. On
exactly.
What could this be? Or
and already the Gang War thing, it's the way it's been received, just on the little kind of indie level. It's been fantastic. I've been buzzing, you know, and I can very candidly say by the end of the Strypes I wasn't buzzing. You know, that kind of thing.
Okay. You needed that time out.
You weren't buzzing about it. You were just relieved. It was just kind of like, you know, a release of pressure as opposed to a great buzz. You know, whereas even this now, you know, working with Richard and the Blowtorch kind of setup, and you know, like doing the little run of vinyls and doing the little thing, you know, and you're kind of cool, you're back to, it's back like when we did the first Strypes EP and we were just doing it for the Larry of it, as they say. You know, it was just purely about that and purely about the buzz, and fuck, I'm really happy with how that's turned out, and the launch gig goes great and do this, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And then, you know, get back just on the kind of gigging kind of thing. You know?
What's coming? Is there much stuff coming this year? Is C sessions?
Yeah, we're confirmed for C sessions and getting out and about. A couple of gigs in the pipeline for Dublin, you know, like as in the Dublin indie scene, and we could be heading abroad. We could be doing a few bits and bobs like that, but we'll have to see how things pan out exactly. Cool. You know, but there's lots of stuff in the pipeline, and I think the thing as well, because we're in total control of this kind of thing, I'd like to be releasing things very frequently. Okay. You know, releasing singles at a good going rate. Right. Okay. You know, that kind of thing. So like, you know, back in the kind of thing, because again, I come from that obsession of, you know, obsessed with the Who and those kind of bands, that in their initial era they were like every like 3 or 4 months there was a new thing, there was a new single. So like, you know, if you can do that yourself, why not? You know,
those albums, those,
exactly.
Artists or output of work was phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. Especially at that time, because they were under so much pressure to do it, and they were contractually obliged to do it. But they managed to, you know, the industry back then was that way. And I think also, though, in the contemporary sense, you have people like Ty Segall and King Gizzard and all those bands who are really, I'm really so into that scene, and they'll release 4 albums in a year, more. You know what I mean? Like, they just have that kind of freewheeling indie punk garage wave going on, where there'll be just random singles and EPs. That's and I think King Gizzard released 6 albums in 1 year or something like that. They all were interconnected in some way, but it was like part of a bigger project. But they still kind of have that unconventional. It's not like, you know, the one album every 5 years has to be an event. It's just like more. I think this is more so than the Strypes times. This is I'm more engaged, without sounding bullshitty. The Savage Hearts is more me engaging on an artistic level, the kind of self-expression. You know, it's like more musical self-expression on my part.
Yeah.
Whereas the Strypes was more of an organic band.
I get you.
Vibe.
Whereas this is the Evan Walsh endeavour.
Yeah, and it's more
of your musical influences.
Coming and more developed because you're older and you have more idea, more of a.
Well, you have a wealth of experience.
And more of an idea of what you'd like to do as well. Where I think.
And you've changed instrument.
Yeah, swapped over the bass. Yeah. Because I actually tried being the drummer at the start of this, and I kind of figured out that you couldn't lead from the back. You know, it was like trying to get other lads trying to explain to everybody it's supposed to sound like X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
When you're leading from the back, it just didn't work. I tried it for a wee while, and I've always wanted to be the bass player as well. I've been, loved being the drummer and loved and all that, but I'm a bass obsessive, like kind of John Entwistle and people like that. I also, when I was a teenager, was trying to learn to play like him and trying to do all that, because it really was a 24/7 obsession of wanting to be immersed in that kind of thing. So, if I can kind of take things a bit easier and play the bass for a wee while, that's just a bit of fun, it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, it looked like you enjoyed yourself at the launch party.
Yeah, and it's kind of getting into that kind of groove, which is good, and even with the band now, like the sax in the band these days, and so it's kind of like it's a much broader thing, because as I said, Strypes is more set in its ways of, well, this is the band and this is how it functions. Everyone has their little dynamic role. So we have like the sax and Terry on the harmonica, and he's Eugenio on the sax as well. Everybody, all the lads that are in the band are fantastic. Dara on lead guitar and vocals, and Emil on drums. They're all exceptionally talented fellas. But like the sax brings such a different colour to it, because I've always had that 50s rock and roll little
you can hear it. Like,
you
can hear the
from
influence
the second
for sure.
It's unbelievable.
So I've kind of always wanted that kind of Jerry Lee Lewis 50s rock and roll, as you say, burn the house down kind of vibe.
Wow. I have to ask you then about Eddie Cruiser.
Oh yeah. So that was kind of just a bit of crack, really. This is kind of like a little kind of thing that goes along with the Savage Hearts, like a little mascot kind of guy, Eddie Cruiser. And now that came about because there is shrouded in mystery, and I'm actually deadly serious. There is an Elvis impersonator hailing from Cavan. I won't divulge his real identity, but when he has impersonated Elvis on occasion, he's gone by the name of Eddie Cruiser.
Okay.
And I just thought, well, if you're going to have a band mascot, it might as well be the Elvis impersonator from Cavan.
Why not?
That kind of suits.
That's incredible.
That kind of sums up my kind of vibe. So you have that. You have this kind of mysterious, kind of menacing guy who's kind of like the band's kind of avatar figure, and he crops up in some of the songs as well.
Yes. And the artwork.
Yeah. So some of the songs that are unreleased at the minute or Eddie Cruiser does come in and out of the lyrical themes.
Right. He's going to follow on the journey.
Yeah, and he's just this guy who kind of lives in the band's little orbit, and this kind of teddy boy, ageless,
got his hair slicked back. He's got his shirt ready. He's getting it ironed for Saturday night. He's going to tear the house down.
Yeah, exactly. And but he's living it up in Cavan, just living the rock and roll Elvis teddy boy fantasy.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Well, we're going to try and wrap it up,
Yep,
Evan, and it's been an absolute pleasure. But before you go, we do have some more questions.
Oh, right,
and one of them being, what is that sound to you when you think of your perfect sound?
Yeah,
that you aspire.
Yeah.
I know you've probably answered it throughout the podcast.
Well, I could probably, if I was to succinctly describe it, it's like, my kind of thing is really like, I suppose, let me just put this together. You've got a kind of there's a kind of I suppose actually the most kind of, or one of the best examples of production that I've really, like a specific sound that I've really thought, holy shit, like that's, if I could be inside that sound, you know, I'd be happy out if I could create something that was like that. There's a band called The Move, which is Roy Wood, who later wrote Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day. Before he was with Wizard, before he did that, he was in this kind of late 60s, early 70s, psychedelic kind of rock, kind of like psychedelic meets heavy rock meets 50s rock and roll revival band called The Move. And they were kind of an underground band in that sort of era. And they have an album called Looking On, and it's like this. The production is like, it's like a wrecking ball. It's like really like, it's like 50s rock and roll riffs being played like this with this real harsh metallic lumbering. It's like heavy machinery. It's like if I imagine it, it's like it feels like heavy grinding, clanking machinery churning out this kind of mangled, kind of psychedelic tinged version of like primal rock and roll, basically.
It sounds similar to what you're bringing to.
Well, there's the influence there. You know, that's kind of it, really. And
that's incredible.
And that's a huge. Roy Wood's music in general is a huge kind of.
That's a cool answer.
No question on the band lineup.
Oh right, yeah.
Oh yeah. So we done this with a few guests. So if you had the power to form a 4-piece band.
Oh yeah.
Dead or alive, to make an album that's going to blow the world out of it.
Okay, yeah.
Who's the 4 guys?
I could say Roger Daltrey, Pete Townsend, John Entwistle, Keith Moon.
Oh man, what an eclectic mix!
Wow.
No, you could have. Let me think about that. Well, I would have John Entwistle on bass. Let me think now. I'll try and vary it up a bit.
No, just go for it.
Lee Brillo from Dr. Feelgood, frontman. He's my favourite frontman, I think. We'll go Jeff Beck on guitar in his Yardbirds pomp. We'll go John Entwistle on bass. And then drums, you see, you could go Keith Moon, but you've already got John Entwistle in there from The Who, so you've kind of got a bit of a... I'll try and vary it up a bit. Let me have a think about that for a second. I'll have Pete Thomas, who's the drummer from Elvis Costello's band. No, sorry, I'm going to change that answer.
Okay.
I'm going to have a fella called Terry Williams, who's the drummer in Rockpile, Dave Edmunds' band. He's an absolutely sensational drummer. So that'd be my four there.
That's the album that's going to blow the world out of it.
Yeah,
that would be absolutely.
It'd blow the garage out of it. Blow the garage doors off anyway.
Yeah, man.
Blow the roller door off.
Yeah.
Well, man, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And
no problem at all.
We have this single from Evan, and we're going to do a competition, and we might get Evan to maybe sign it, and we'll get a competition going, and it's an absolute banger of a song, guys. Check it out. Evan has some great social media too. Check him out, Savage Hearts. I was watching it earlier today, actually, footage of the launch show. Like, it's...
thanks very much.
I'm really looking forward to checking you guys out.
Yeah. Sure, hopefully we'll have you along.
Yeah, definitely.
For anyone that's at C Sessions or will be in town for any of the gigs, make sure you make your way along. You surely won't regret it.
Yeah, there'll be more gigs, plenty more gigs being announced on social media and stuff as the year goes on. So stay tuned as the old saying goes.
Evan, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much, man.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's all for this week's episode on That Sound podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Evan Walsh as much as we did.
Yeah, it was brilliant to have Evan here. Evan has done things that people only dream about doing. Evan has done it all at such a young age as well. Tour in America, tour in Canada, Japan, mixing with the biggest artists in the world, you know, and such a down-to-earth guy. Again, thanks to Evan for coming down, having the conversation with us. We also have Evan's new single, Gang War, on vinyl that we're going to do a competition. So keep an eye on our socials, and we'll be dropping that competition soon. We hope to catch you on the next one.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.